This time we start a new story with knights in a hurry, searching for something or apparently someone. They're looking for a man with silver hair, around 20 years old, and a woman with brown hair and green eyes. The inn owner says he genuinely hasn't seen anyone matching those descriptions, and makes it clear the place is completely full. One of the knights says he doesn't believe they're in that place, suggesting they continue searching. But the captain rejects the idea, saying the ones they're looking for must have disguised themselves, and that makes him pretty angry. He takes out his fury on the man in front of him, causing chaos. The people around run while the captain warns the knights to follow him to the train station. The captain raises his hand to his face as if annoyed or something like that, but soon he starts laughing diabolically, saying that Maddie just needs to wait a little longer. Meanwhile, we follow the train speeding along, with people calm as the journey continues. Maddie is sitting in her seat wearing a beautiful suit, reading the newspaper. The other person is annoyed that the girl is wearing men's clothes while she has to wear a dress. Maddie just whispers, "Honey, as you said, don't be fooled by outward appearances, and see with your heart what a beautiful woman you are. Straighten your shoulders and sit with confidence," and ends by saying, "Your hair color stands out." But the blonde girl isn't very interested in that, and something in the newspaper catches her attention. It's an article revealing her true identity, and the headline is about the Grand Duke having a romance with a woman from the slums. While stealing a passenger's glasses, Maddie says the photo came out really well. The scandalous news about the Grand Duke marrying a commoner causes an uproar among the train passengers, with people saying His Excellency has lost his mind, and that makes him furious. Ulikian asks how much further they have to go, but the woman simply gets up saying they're getting off right now. Maddie walks through stealing a few more belongings from passengers, with the Duke desperately following behind. Either way, he ends up following her. Maddie turns around and delivers the great news that he'll be able to take off the dress soon, which cheers him up quite a bit. The woman opens a door, warning they're going to jump right there, leaving the Grand Duke apprehensive about that, not loving the idea of jumping off a moving train. Maddie looks at him and asks why he's making that face like he's never done this before. But of course, the Grand Duke has never had to do anything like this. The woman finds it funny that he screams whenever he gets nervous and then jumps, warning that this is the only chance to do it, completely ignoring the Duke's shout that it's dangerous. Maddie rolls across the ground, keeping her limbs tucked to avoid any damage. She quickly gets her balance. Worried, the Duke asks if she's okay and if she got hurt. Maddie is standing, visibly fine. Then she turns around and extends her hand. Ulikian says emotionally that she always does reckless things that worry him, and that's exactly why he decides to take the leap too, except that unlike his fiancée, he's more clumsy, sliding all the way down the hill, and all he wishes is that he doesn't regret falling for Maddie. But let's go back a few months before this event. The maids talk about the Grand Duke sneaking off to the slums again. They talk about how every day the young man shows up drunk and lament it, saying that if the late lord were there, his heart would break to see his son falling apart like this. Grand Duke Ulikian Rondinez is the son of the former Crown Prince Haldan, and the only nephew of the current emperor. After losing his parents to the emperor, he spent his nights drowning in alcohol, pretending to be a fool. All of this to avoid the watchful eyes of his uncle, who saw him as a threat to the throne. Ulikian keeps his eyes sharp on what's happening around him, but he knows that no matter how many times he comes to this wretched slum, he still simply can't get there. Everything was going as usual until someone ordering a beer caught his attention. The bartender asks if she's betting again as soon as she leaves the house, but the woman just smiles and says she's only trying to lighten the mood, and it's not like she's drinking for free. The man next to her wants to know if she was in the detention cell again, and another one also wants to know how long she was there. Maddie answers that the whole thing lasted just one day, but she didn't even see much happen since she drank so much she passed out. While playing cards, the guy explained that he thought she had been caught stealing wallets again, but Maddie makes it clear she's way too skilled for that to happen. Aware that there's a new guy guarding the bets, Maddie grabs her bag of money, ready to bet and settle this problem. But the guy catches her attention. She's never seen him before, and it's pretty obvious he's not the card-playing type, which makes her curious about why he's there. The Grand Duke, on the other hand, just thinks about how loud she is and intends to stay out of it, rejecting anything and being rude by telling her to mind her own business. Watching the silver-haired guy leave, Maddie provokes him by saying she wants a piece of his money too, but he doesn't give in to her provocations, which pulls a smile from the woman. Maddie quickly gives up on the game that just started, using the excuse that she's going home to sleep. Meanwhile, Ulikian is outside enjoying the silence of the night, which doesn't last very long. He tells Maddie to leave, knowing she's going to pull some dirty trick, and says he has no patience for that. The woman plays innocent, asking how a gentleman could speak so rudely. The Grand Duke growls, turning to face her, and says he has no time for a crazy woman, telling her to get lost. He notices her clothes are covered in hay, which makes him think she's just another con artist. At that moment, someone appears trying to hurt Maddie, but the girl is fast, dodging the blow. She says that scared her and asks who it is. Furious, the man introduces himself as Josh from Ulikian Hardware and says he's been looking for her for a long time and demands she return his wife. Maddie plays dumb, saying she has no involvement with that man's wife, which makes the man even more furious because he knows very well that Maddie helped his wife escape, only she won't say it, since the wife always had a bruised face. She says he could have treated her well while he had the chance, but she keeps denying she helped her escape. Ulikian simply watches the whole scene, noticing that the opponent has a cleaver in his hands. Josh threatens that if she doesn't say where his wife is, he'll chop her into pieces. Maddie worries that this will make her lose her precious client, so she intends to put an end to it, and says that if she wins, Josh has to give up. Josh goes in confidently, and the Grand Duke, who's caught in the middle of this mess, panics. But with just one shot, Maddie solves the problem. Josh screams, feeling his leg hurt, while the woman just watches this pathetic man. Ulikian stares at her, completely baffled. Well, this might be a perfect start for Maddie and her whole life. The whole commotion drew people together while Josh complains, but Maddie defends herself, saying only her little finger pulled the trigger, so there's no way it counts as cheating. Waving the gun around, she says having something so disgusting gave her the urge to drink. Then she turns to the silver-haired guy and invites him to go somewhere quiet and have a drink. But the Grand Duke is in complete shock by what just happened, which leaves Maddie worried, not knowing what's wrong with him, thinking maybe the gunshot just came out too loud. She extends her hand asking if he's hurt, but the silver-haired guy brusquely refuses. Ulikian turns around and warns her not to follow him because he has no energy to waste on someone like her. But Maddie remains completely unfazed by that reaction. She turns to the crowd, extending a brooch she stole while asking who wants to drink with her. Ulikian continues on his way silently. However, his mind is loud with memories from the past. The boy looks at the sick woman in bed who tells him that no matter what happens, he must stay alive. She starts coughing non-stop, leaving the boy scared. Well, either way, he has to keep his promise and stay alive. But he also wonders what he should do after that. This seems to drive him to despair, and shows just how much he had no support after that tragedy. And he understands that whatever happens, he just can't end up the same way his parents did. His father disappeared into the lake a month later, and the state he was found in, bloated, impossible to recognize, just a huge grotesque lump, led the imperial court to conclude it was self-inflicted. But there was no reason for that. Everything before had been perfect and calm, and they were happy. His mother's death was also suspicious, having withered from an unknown illness that only looked like she had fallen asleep. But her hands turned blue, just like his father's. They never caught the culprit, but there was someone he suspected, someone he couldn't even name. And so Rafadit Paragon Londonez took the throne in his father's place. With the end of the crown prince, Ulikian became the obvious successor. No matter how, he survived. From that moment on, he played the fool, showing no interest in politics, acting like a hopeless scoundrel. And so the throne passed to his uncle. With a bit of cynicism, Rafadit laments what happened to his relatives, but says the young man needs to pull himself together. At that moment, Ulikian laughs, saying how much the man seems like a comedian, acting as if he wouldn't finish him off the moment he had the chance. The Grand Duke thinks he needs to find a bigger, powerful enough distraction to make them lose interest in him, keeping them busy with that and preventing them from noticing his approach. Someone puts a hood over his head, blinding him, and takes his sword. Even without being able to see, he senses there's more than one person there. This person ties a rope around his neck and pulls tight with the intention of seriously hurting him. His eyes slowly start to close, and that's when he thinks this is how his end will come. But something is happening. His captors are attacked one by one. It's Maddie who appeared to rescue him, fighting those brutes, throwing them far away after landing good hits. One of the men resists, grabbing her, saying she doesn't know when to be scared. But Maddie grabs his wrist and delivers a solid hit right to his chin. She grabs him by the chin, then punches him straight in the nose, making the man fall and beg her to wait. But Maddie doesn't listen, leaving Ulikian completely baffled once again that night. But he notices there's a lot going on here. First, this commoner is clinging to a stranger she just met, and then pulling out a firearm, which he finds very suspicious. He also didn't miss how clean and precise her technique is, so only one answer comes to mind. The Emperor sent her. But after staring at him seriously, Maddie just tells him to get up. While going through the pockets of those men, Maddie hums a song and hands him a heavy bag, saying it's the change for the brooch. Ulikian is completely confused while Maddie is extremely surprised he hasn't figured it out yet. She laughs, saying that at this rate he'll have even his underwear stolen, and jokes, asking if the rope around his neck is a necklace. Maddie has to explain that she took the brooch because he didn't pay for a drink, so she was a little sad having to take drastic measures. Cheerfully, she says if he had accepted to play poker before, she would have stripped him from head to toe, and that finding a brooch as payment was a bargain. Ulikian asks if she's insane, and the woman laughs, saying she's only a little crazy. He stands up irritated while Maddie says they'll be seeing each other often, revealing she likes the silver-haired guy because he's handsome. Ulikian opens the bag to take a look, noticing inside there are a few gold coins along with his photo. This worries him. The Grand Duke grabs the commoner by the arm and says they need to talk a little, and this is his big move to make the Emperor lose interest in him. Maddie looks at him somewhat surprised, while the Grand Duke himself seems nervous about what he said. But then the girl notices the hand holding hers, keeping her there. So she pulls away from him and scolds him, saying he can't just grab people like that. Maddie even provokes him, saying he's bolder than she expected, but he tries to justify himself, saying he was in a hurry. But then he notices the woman called him Your Grace and asks how she knows he's a duke. Maddie says with the silver hair and the clothes, it's more obvious than anything, and if nobody could recognize him, that would be his chance to become a spy. Ulikian says, and even knowing that, you still had the nerve to pull that stunt. Are you asking to be arrested for insulting a member of royalty? Maddie is quick to talk and cuts through all that, asking what grabbing her meant, that he wants something. She says she understands the idea and asks him to follow her, already having an appropriate place in mind. Maddie walks cheerfully ahead, humming, while the Grand Duke just follows a few steps behind. Ulikian remains suspicious because even though the girl saved him, it doesn't mean she's really on his side. He looks in every direction, noticing that if he gets kidnapped in a place like this, it will definitely be his end. Finally, Maddie stops, then presents her office. Ulikian has endless questions, especially why there's a room between walls. The place, despite where it's located, seems cozy, and Maddie asks him to sit so they can begin the consultation. Even reluctantly, the Duke does what was asked. Maddie smiles, saying the client seems quite skeptical, which makes some sense since he was just strangled by some assassins.
This is the moment for her work. While writing some things down, the girl says he must have heard her name before and asks what his reason is for wanting to hire her as his personal bodyguard. Maddie asks if he wants to be protected while sneaking around and intends to charge 100 dirham per day, but Ulikian just cuts her off, asking if she swears loyalty to the country, which doesn't please the woman. After all, why would someone like her need the country? Her motto is that wherever she can sleep is her home and whoever pays her is her client, but the Duke is taking things more seriously. He says it doesn't matter who she is, but there are things he needs to verify with her. Things like whether she's a spy or has the necessary skills to protect. Maddie fidgets with something under her skirt, which doesn't go unnoticed by Ulikian. Getting a better look, he realizes it's a holster where she probably keeps her weapons, and so he understands all those layers of clothing are to hide everything she carries, which is quite a lot. Maddie slaps the table, firing something while asking the Duke what he's looking at. Ulikian looks behind him in alarm, seeing that a knife was thrown, hitting a centipede. After that, the woman smiles, saying she can't catch insects with her bare hands. He has to admit her skill really is excellent. Maddie believes the silver-haired guy is an agent sent by the Emperor and explains that even though she's a mercenary, she still has her own professional ethics, and says she doesn't switch loyalties on a whim. She doesn't even have any idea where each organ is in her body, and they could give them to her, but none of that matters since she just wants to know if he's going to pay her. Still, Ulikian asks how he can simply trust her. Maddie uses the insect she hit as an example, explaining that it was for her client's sake, which the Duke ends up agreeing with. After all, he knows that if she were really the Emperor's agent, he would have already been eliminated the moment he walked into the room. Ulikian asks if since the beginning the only interest was because she thought he needed a bodyguard, but Maddie denies it and continues saying it's because she finds him handsome. She says she finds him beautiful, especially with that mix of silver hair and such bright blue eyes. Maddie stands up cheerfully, saying that besides turning out to be good-looking, the silver-haired guy hired her and even offered money, so she guarantees she'll protect him with all her effort. So the woman promises to protect him, but makes it clear that the method depends on the price chosen, whether something more discreet or a spectacle for the public. And she also explains her fees for shipping in case someone's head needs to be sent. The girl gets excited thinking she's a great negotiator, but Ulikian says he doesn't need things resolved in front of him, since this time his team will clean up the bodies. Which is a relief for her since she really wanted to eat something after signing the contract. She's quite hungry. Maddie gets up asking if he washes dishes right after eating, which Ulikian finds absurd, comparing that to eliminating people. She says the silver-haired guy seems like the type who washes immediately, and Ulikian questions why she's writing that in the contract. Maddie notices the handwriting error while asking why he's screaming in her office, especially since it's not soundproofed. Ulikian asks where she received training, but she guarantees she knows nothing about her life before she was 17. While tossing knives in the air, she says she simply discovered she had a talent for this kind of work. She demonstrates how good she is with knives and says she can modify weapons on top of being a good shooter and fighter. The girl returns the dagger she stole again. Still, one question remains, and Ulikian asks if there's any chance she's the daughter of some noble. The Duke looks away when the girl gives him that smile, but when he looks back at her again, he's startled by the countless scars on her body. Maddie asks if her legs weren't convincing enough, otherwise she can show her arms. And she does, asking if she looks like a noble, a girl with no past and no parents, only masters. Maddie kneels and says that if he hires her as a bodyguard, she guarantees he'll be protected. Ulikian asks her to decide whether she'll use formal language or something more casual, which Maddie ignores, saying it doesn't matter since she'll be protecting him in the shadows. All she really talks about are her rates. But Ulikian holds her hand, saying he doesn't want a bodyguard but a woman for something else. With a smile, Maddie guesses if it's for a date or something like that.
He denies it. To become a complete delinquent, he just needs them to get married. And so Ulikian makes the proposal, asking her to marry him. He says she doesn't seem like someone sent by the Emperor, and she's also very difficult to eliminate, which makes her a perfect candidate. But of course Maddie is not thrilled, trying to dodge it by saying she doesn't do things like that. Why would she get married? Meanwhile, Ulikian is still excited about this proposal that's too good to let pass. The woman says she wouldn't do just anything for money. However, she stops when she hears the offer of 1 million and thinks she must have heard wrong. Ulikian realizes that not even this proposal seems to be enough to make her accept, so he needs to try harder. So he improves the offer, offering 1 billion as a divorce settlement after spending at least 3 years married. And if she wants to go to another country, he makes it clear he'll set up a separate exile fund. Ulikian asks what she thinks of the proposal, and of course that's something she'd never let pass. Excitedly, she accepts the proposal of her soulmate she's been waiting for her whole life. Obviously, obviously a clear piece of irony. Maddie analyzes the new contract. The requirements are not to spare money on the wedding reception and to always show affection in front of others, which the groom contests, saying it's a way to attract attention. In the contract, they must care for each other in an indecent way, and Maddie wants a 100 million advance when they marry, as well as a monthly allowance, and makes it clear that physical contact should only happen when someone else is around. But of course, all of this only counts if both of them survive the 3 years of marriage, and that's why Maddie intends to do her best to protect her fiancé. The woman asks why Ulikian wants to do this, especially with someone like her, and finds these conditions strange, but Ulikian doesn't care much, since in the end the objective is to protect him no matter what, which she understands just fine. Maddie also understood that the emperor sent people to eliminate any successors to the throne, and that's why the duke disguised himself as a nobody, and now has arranged something similar to make it clear he's not a viable target. Ulikian notices how sharp the woman is. On top of being a good talker, she's clever both mentally and physically, which makes him wonder why she's there in the slums, not to mention wasting time just gambling and nothing more than that. That's why the duke stands up and questions her, saying that with her skills she could easily get a job as a noble's assistant, and asks why she's killing herself doing work that's just cleaning up other people's messes. Maddie answers that she has no idea, she just doesn't like the idea of feeling trapped. Even the thought of belonging to someone gives her the creeps, so the duke makes her uneasy by saying she needs to fix that issue first, asking how she thinks other people will react when she talks to the duke so casually, which Maddie understands means they'll think she's a rude, uneducated idiot. Ulikian says that will ruin his reputation, and she asks, but isn't that the main goal of our deal? Cheerfully, Maddie says they're pulling a con right in front of the whole country so they can't be sloppy. The silver-haired guy just asks her to drop the use of pet names like Honey. The woman plays confused, asking if he doesn't want another option like Darling, making him even more nervous with all the options that keep coming up. Ulikian gets serious, saying he understands the goal is to ruin his reputation, but they need to at least show they actually like each other, which does make a little sense, otherwise it won't be convincing to the emperor. Maddie agrees with that too. That's why she writes that they should go easy on the pranks. The duke decides to add one more thing to the contract, that she's forbidden from running away even if she faces insults or threats. The penalty for that is paying 10 times the value he offered. Maddie finds it amusing, his way of saying don't die and stay by my side. Ulikian hands her the pen while saying it's also his wish to make it through those 3 years safe and sound, so both of them sign the contract. Maddie asks when they should get married. Ulikian has in mind that first he obviously needs to make the proposal, which should be quite striking. So a few days pass. In the duke's mansion, the housekeeper asks another maid to also bring the shoes, throwing orders left and right because everything is a mess since the sudden commotion. Rayleigh answers that the woman just said she didn't like brown, but the woman explains that was because of the perforated design, while this one is more elegant. She's nervous because his grace suddenly became demanding about this, whereas before he simply ignored even the fact that he had to comb his hair. Rayleigh says love changed him, and even though she doesn't know who the noble fiancé is, at least he found a destined partner, and the housekeeper thinks the whole thing is nonsense. The green-haired girl says it was about time the duke found someone. At that moment, the butler appears, startling her, and informs them that the duke is expecting the requested items to be delivered. Rayleigh quickly rushes. The young man Miley appears to inform that all the requested items have been moved. Philip comments, surprised how the duke used to only go out at night to gamble, and now is simply dressed like this, which makes him wonder if his grace is really as in love as Miley says, though he seems a little suspicious of that. Meanwhile, the duke is in the carriage, which soon stops as they reach the destination. He's dressed formally and well-groomed, carrying some flowers in the color that represents him, reminding himself to keep an emotional expression. Ulikian forces his biggest smile while saying, when we return there will be 2 of us, leaving the coachman a little confused. The duke walks through the streets, drawing everyone's attention, but his mind is a little far away, thinking about how to make the marriage proposal. He opts to be very formal rather than something more casual, and he should act as if he's completely in love. He arrives at the entrance to the alley where they agreed to meet, but he's surprised. Maddie isn't there and already imagines something might have happened, until he hears the woman's voice. Maddie comes toward him excitedly, playing surprised to run into him there too, using the pet name and suggesting they're together. She ends by saying she missed him. Ulikian gets all flustered just hearing her call him honey. He's also mortified because the woman forgot that rule about not being too playful and instead acting with a bit more moderation. But Maddie keeps playing it up, asking what he's doing there so early and saying she was wishing she could have gone to visit him. Ulikian just turns red, not knowing how to act, feeling as if the atmosphere had completely changed, but he thinks about the woman having complimented his handsome face, making him think Maddie really does like him. A little awkwardly, the duke hands over the bouquet he bought. Maddie accepts it, thanking him and saying she's never received flowers so big and fresh before. She smells them, feeling the delicious and sweet aroma. While still keeping her eyes on him as she does it, she says that thanks to the duke she's experiencing many things for the first time. Needless to say, that left him even more speechless and red. Ulikian feels like he's about to faint, feeling his heart suddenly racing. He leans in and whispers for her to slow down, reminding himself that all of this is just an act. This time it's Maddie who turns red. In the end, she just smiles. Abruptly, Maddie pushes the Duke, remembering that there are people around. She's still acting, but the push threw him off balance. But the woman keeps being wonderful and smiling beautifully, which makes him keep questioning whether it's really just an act. Maddie comments that his face looks pale and asks if they should go somewhere else. In a whisper, she asks, "Do you want to end things or do you want the Emperor to end you?" That leaves the Duke baffled. That's why Ulikian thinks he needs to pull himself together quickly and finish this all, so he starts by saying, "I know this isn't the right place to say this, but it's been hard to hold back." Maddie plays dumb, saying the flowers are already too much, but inside she's going crazy wanting him to just get it over with. Finally, Ulikian holds her hand and says, "Maddie, marry me." She plays dumb, saying she didn't quite catch that. So Ulikian reaffirms it, asking for them to get married and live together because that's all he needs for the rest of his life. Those words leave the commoners around them emotional, hearing the declaration, and of course everyone roots for her to accept. Maddie looks a little startled and embarrassed. Then she apologizes to him and ends up running away. This situation wasn't even part of Ulikian's plan. He knows it will be hard to catch the woman who easily defeated two brutes. Still, with a little effort he manages, making Maddie stop immediately and face him with emotional eyes. The Duke asks why she ran. She says something shocking. "I don't want to get married anymore." Of course that leaves the Duke thrown off, desperately saying they have to get married. Maddie uses that famous cliché, "What will people say?" "They'll say I agreed just because you're a duke." With eyes full of tears, she says she didn't intend to go this far, that it's something so impossible she never even let herself dream of it, and now she doesn't know how to handle it. Maddie asks why he's trying to make her happy, and even now it's all just too much. Ulikian has absolutely no idea what to do, since he's never met anyone like this before, but there's no time to answer because Maddie throws her things back at him. He didn't even notice when his watch and the very ring were stolen. Maddie also gives him back more things, saying it all reminds her of him. He finally understands what's happening, while Maddie says he's a noble and that as soon as he hears the opposition that doesn't want this marriage, he'll simply leave her. That exaggerated act almost gave him a heart attack. After calming down, Maddie pulls him by the clothes and comes together with him. Ulikian also steps forward, hugging her back. The Duke is completely lost in the fragrance of the flowers until Maddie whispers for him to repeat out loud that he loves her and that he won't give up on them. So the Duke repeats those words, making his intentions very clear. Maddie once again gives a hint on how to proceed. He follows along, touching her lips with his finger. The next step, which wasn't planned, is that he goes even further, pressing both their lips together. The people around cheer. The lovebirds look at each other a little embarrassed. Maddie tells them to be quiet so she can have a little romance in peace and asks exasperatedly if there's any rule stopping her from getting married. Enough with the gossip. Ulikian just looks at her, thinking about all that acting and about what it would be like to see her actually falling in love. The Duke continues with the proposal, saying that since he met her, his life has become a completely different world, and he intends for it to stay that way. Maddie looks at the ring on her finger emotionally and asks if it's okay that it's someone like her. If all of this is just acting, he's safe, so he assures Maddie that she's the only one who fits. It goes without saying that the gossip spread about the love story between the Duke and the commoner. Many find it romantic, love that transcends class. The Duke is back at his mansion, and what he brought left all the servants stunned. Maddie's arrival truly shook things up. With everything settled, it's time for a good meal. It turns out the cook doesn't look very happy, and with his words he says he doesn't understand why his grace brought such a despicable beggar, obviously accusing her of being nothing but a gold digger. But Rayleigh says the Duke is also in love, having even held the woman's hand earlier. Still, the man considers the possibility that the innocent prince is being deceived. Furiously, the cook decides to oversalt the food as a form of revenge because he doesn't want someone like that to taste what he made. Philip steps in, stopping him, and says it was His Majesty's choice and it must be respected. And besides, he's a grown man who needs his empty heart filled, and he believes the stranger can do that. The food is served, and besides finding it delicious, Maddie thanks her fiancé for cutting the pieces. She then takes a piece and offers it to him, asking him to open his mouth and saying it's something she always wanted to try. The woman says they always met in closed environments, so technically they never truly ate together. What should have been cute could be a disaster. The three of them watching in alarm. Ulikian remembers Maddie having taught him to look at her at least once every 3 seconds with a smile. With that in mind, he accepts the meat she's offering. But the look he gives her certainly can't be described as someone in love. He suggests the two of them switch plates, leaving her wanting to know why, not wanting to tell the truth. He just explains that his meat is more well done than usual, and that he has a refined palate. And giving a deadly look, he says the chef must have made a mistake preparing 2 portions. Maddie accepts the swap calmly, and meanwhile tries the other options. Something she eats makes her stop, which worries the Duke about whether something is wrong. She explains that the butter on the sweet potato is so smooth and she guesses some honey was also added. Immediately, Ulikian turns to the chef and asks if that's right. Still scared out of his wits, the man confirms it, explaining it's premium butter, something ordinary people could never dream of, with a drizzle of quality honey. Maddie likes it so much she asks for the Duke's as well, which he kindly hands over. She seems totally focused on the Duke, but in reality, her eyes are sharp on the plate, having noticed something wrong with the potatoes. Later, Miley sneaks into the pantry. He peeks around first to see if anyone's coming while pulling something out of his pocket. He has a syringe with a strange substance, about to inject it into the potatoes, but someone attacks him. Maddie, with a terrifying look, asks if he was the one responsible for what happened earlier. Miley is properly gagged and blindfolded. He finally wakes up and recognizes the voice of the woman who attacked him. Maddie asks him not to move too much, and touching something in his mouth says it's the poison he brought himself. Showing she knows everything, she explains she's referring to the fist-sized flask that's in his pocket, and she removed the cork with a cloth. Smiling, Maddie advises him not to drool too much, because the more the cloth gets wet, the faster the poison will leak, leaving the sneaky criminal in despair. Now she demands the man tells her who sent him. Miley panics because if he tells the truth, his family will suffer the consequences. Seeing that there will be no answer, Maddie stands up and says there's nothing she can do. She says they're in a storage room where nobody comes, so it'll take a while for someone to find him, and with a gracious smile she asks him to take care. So Miley is left behind. Soon panicking, he falls to the ground. Miley can't feel his body and thinks it's already the effect of the poison. This poison has the property of slowly paralyzing the nerves, and when it was given to him, they explained it wouldn't cause serious harm. He just needed to pour it into the Grand Duke's meal. But Miley regrets it and understands he should have run when he heard that, even though he's not an assassin. He knows that if he swallows all of it, he'll be paralyzed until his end comes. He hears noises at the door, thinking someone is coming to finish him off, and wishes at least to have a chance to explain himself. The one who appears is the Grand Duke, asking if he's okay. Maddie advises not to touch the man who poisoned his food, but Ulikian questions why she tied him up like this. He says there must be a reason, since Miley has worked for his family for over 10 years, believing he must have acted under threat. Ulikian says he would never hurt him and that the man always treated him like a son. After removing the gag from his mouth, Ulikian asks if he really poisoned his food. While crying a lot and apologizing, Miley says they offered him a lot of money and with children to care for, he desperately needed it. The Duke is completely saddened by this revelation. Even so, he says he'll look for the antidote. However, Maddie advises letting him die since the poison has already spread, but Ulikian doesn't blame Miley for that, instead thinking it's being born into his family that's a sin, and so he asks her to bring the antidote. Miley is shocked that the Duke continues to be kind even after what he did, and knowing his end is near, he wants to make sure he knows who sent him, guaranteeing he avoids the danger. Through tears, he says the name Montaigne Zondo, but Ulikian is only concerned, asking him not to speak until he takes the antidote, and warns that as soon as he opens his eyes, the man must leave the territory immediately. Still, Miley tries to say the name, and the Duke soothes him. The three of them leave the storage room, with Miley inside a bag being pulled by a cart. Maddie observes from above, and comments that she should have noticed something was wrong when the Duke only removed the gag but not the blindfold. She also can't understand why he didn't poison him back, because that's something she would have done, but the Duke keeps resisting that idea. Maddie is by his side now. The Duke says her plan was smart, and they got what they needed, since in an interrogation Miley wouldn't have said anything. When Miley was attacked, the Duke was there the whole time, and the poison was dripped into his mouth after a few taps, and so they made up a lie about it being on the cloth. Ulikian asks if the poison doesn't affect her, since she really did eat the sweet potato, but Maddie says her body has always been like that, as if it doesn't have an effect, and she even takes the opportunity to provoke him by asking if he's genuinely worried. The Duke just asks her to stop joking and hurry up. The woman hops onto his horse and faces him, asking about the name Miley said. Thinking about it leaves Ulikian a little sad, because it's the Count of Montenezondo, his uncle. Maddie stares at him with her usual look, and gets excited to immediately eliminate the man, being stopped by the Duke. Startled, she covers her ears asking why he yelled like that, and reminds him that she only gets her billion if he survives for 3 years. But Ulikian asks her not to worry, guaranteeing he'll stay alive. He takes the opportunity to complain about her riding and sitting in front of him, that the ping is wall the medidipilpring stot. Maddie laughs and explains she never learned how to ride but can learn quickly if he teaches her. Changing the subject, she asks why he doesn't have a bodyguard, since with so many incidents it becomes necessary. Then Ulikian reveals he had one as a child but that they all died or left him, and since then nobody has accepted the job. Maddie is genuinely impressed. Without seeing her expression, the Duke believes she might also get scared and run before the agreed time, or maybe 3 months early. But then she turns around. With a big smile, Maddie says she'll be the first bodyguard who won't run, and that leaves him completely impressed. His expression quickly changes and he smiles. Even though he suffered an attack earlier, it doesn't matter in that moment. He's about to speak about what might happen if he doesn't die, but Maddie interrupts him saying she won't let that happen. Maddie celebrates that she'll get her billion. Ulikian even thinks he's going crazy, or that he's really being influenced by this woman. The two finally return to the mansion. The coachman appears to help with the horse and is impressed by the scene, seeing the two of them holding hands with loving gazes. The same goes for the household servants. Maddie says he must be tired from the little nighttime adventure and tells him she'll go to the bedroom so he can also rest a bit. Ulikian says nothing, only throws a slightly flushed glance her way. Then before she leaves, he calls for her. Ulikian holds her hand, bringing their bodies together, and asks her to stay in his room tonight. Maddie stutters her answer a bit. She asks how they can sleep in the same room. But the Duke makes a good excuse, reminding her that they'll have to share when they get married, and so he calls her. Now they're finally alone in the room. Ulikian simply asks her to hand it over. He has no idea why she'd steal a ring with the family crest. Meanwhile, Maddie laments that for the first time the Duke noticed the theft, even though she's always been so good at it. Ulikian doesn't care about that detail. He just wants what was stolen, and asks who will be the suspect when valuable things start disappearing. He asks if she wants to be treated like a low-level thief and get thrown out. Not to mention she could lose 1 billion. So Maddie shakes her skirt, revealing all the things she stole in a single day, which leaves the Duke quite stunned. Maddie just smiles and offers him the contract as well. Ulikian finds it strange since they agreed each would keep a copy, until he realizes that one is his, which she also stole. The bodyguard laughs, asking who keeps something so important in their chest pocket. Anyone could go through it, but the Duke immediately turns red, asking who would do that. So Maddie provokes him, saying that with such a beautiful body, anyone would want to go through it. A chest that big, impossible not to notice. Ulikian, embarrassed, asks her to stop that and asks her to repeat, "I will not steal things recklessly." But Maddie is resistant, asking if that's part of the contract. Not very happy about the things she has to do for 1 billion. Well, for that amount it's pretty hard not to follow through. Ulikian just asks her to behave and follow the rules, and in the end Maddie agrees not to steal recklessly. The second requirement is not to eliminate people without reason. She's about to repeat it until she stops. Maddie doesn't understand why not. After all, what will she do if she's in danger or there's another immediate threat? And the Duke explains that's exactly why he said without reason, which doesn't cover those cases. And the last thing is that she must not run away. Maddie smiles, provoking him, saying it's very romantic. The Duke then tells her what happened to those bodies left behind, explaining that he reported them to the security forces, and since then they've been looking for witnesses and suspects. That leaves Maddie furious for having saved him from death, only to now be threatened with it. He says nothing, only thinking of his mother on her deathbed, asking him not to die in vain. Ulikian growls in irritation, asking her to just not run away, and so she'll receive the money and survive alongside him. Maddie just turns away, unable to look at him anymore, and accepts, while the Duke, seeming slightly disconnected from reality, remembers the deal is good for both of them and it's best to see it through to the end. Suddenly his eyes go wide. Ulikian wants to understand why she's taking off her clothes, but Maddie doesn't understand what he's talking about. After all, he's the one who brought her to the room late at night, and asks if they shouldn't do something about it. Ulikian gets very nervous and quickly says that's not why he brought her there, and reminds her that she herself agreed in the contract they wouldn't do those kinds of things. Maddie just seems surprised he's stuttering all of a sudden. She asks him to think about the fact that the Duke took her away from the slums like a lovesick idiot, and then publicly declared they were in a relationship, and says he then brought her to the bedroom in the middle of the night. Still nervous, Ulikian defends himself, saying he did that because of the theft, explaining he has no intention of sleeping with someone he doesn't even like, and says she doesn't need to do anything unnecessary either. A little out of patience with the slowness, Maddie explains they don't actually have to sleep together for real, just pretend they did. She says the wooden floors are very good at carrying sound. Maddie goes to the bed and grabs one side, then calls him, asking for help shaking the bed. After a while of hard work, the two of them collapse onto the bed exhausted. Maddie lies down after making sure all her sweat was left at the scene of the crime. Ulikian doesn't understand why they had to go that far, but Maddie ignores the question and asks if he wants to roll around in the bed, since the maids are a bit sensitive about these things. Once more, the Duke asks if they really need to do these things. All it took was Maddie asking, "Do you simply not want to pay me, or do you have a death wish?" It didn't take much to convince the Duke to roll around in the bed. In the end, he understands that even if the whole world wants his end, that woman will protect him as long as she's being paid. And he thinks he tried to hire someone worthless and ended up finding the worst of them all, but he tries to ignore those thoughts and see it as a good thing. Ulikian then breaks the silence, telling her that even if someone offers double his payment, she can't leave. Maddie smiles, saying she understands that since there are some people in this line of work who are truly scoundrels, so she makes it clear she's a woman with professional ethics. Ulikian tries to reinforce it by saying she can't do that even if the amount is 5 times more. Maddie smiles, saying that a silver-haired, blue-eyed man is her type, so keeping him alive is worth 5 billion. Ulikian even says he'll make sure she gets a generous allowance to spend however she likes. The Duke, still insecure, says not to leave even if someone offers 10 times the value this time, and the girl makes a face like, wow, that offer is hard to refuse, making the Duke almost have a heart attack from the joke. Maddie tells him to lie down and sleep, saying he looks horrible after being up all night. Ulikian agrees but still asks if she'd accept 10 billion to leave, so Maddie guarantees she wouldn't, and that she's not a liar either. Thinking about it, she admits she's a little bit of a liar, but this isn't one of those cases. After blowing out the candle, Maddie leans in and touches his forehead, asking him not to make a frowning face. Curious, Ulikian wants to know why she always talks about his face, and asks if he reminds her of her first love. It's then that Maddie says he is her first love. Seeing his eyes growing heavy, the woman says they did a good job. Maddie is sitting on the edge of the bed while saying that if any other villain shows up this time, she'll assess the situation and handle it cleanly, so he doesn't need to worry. The day breaks and the two are at the breakfast table. While from the gossip running wild, the Duke realizes the bed shaking really worked, so he thinks she's a reliable con artist, and for that he'll have to keep putting up with her. Maddie pushes a telegram that arrived earlier, one she took care of. But Ulikian doesn't give it much importance, saying it's bad manners to check those things at the dining table. Maddie doesn't care and just throws the paper, saying, "I'll just throw this away, even though it looks like someone is dying to see you." That makes the Duke want to look at it, and of course the bodyguard teases him about good manners. It's from his uncle, who's not at all satisfied with the woman he chose, and leaving a little sting, says that the late prince would be devastated by this news. He finishes by warning he'll be arriving for lunch so they can talk. Ulikian looks at his pocket watch, seeing it's only 10 a.m. In a panic, the Duke alerts Maddie that they urgently need to buy clothes, but she's just enjoying her food and asks if they really need to impress someone who tried to poison him. So the Duke explains that to get married, they need the approval of at least 3 family elders, which is why she needs to behave well to obtain that. Maddie swallows her piece of meat. She stands up ready to get that approval. While walking, Ulikian just warns he'll pay for everything, so she has no need to steal, while the bodyguard asks why he's acting so irritated, as if he's about to be kicked out. Maddie makes him nervous when she says, "Anyone would think you're truly in love with me," so he simply responds, "As if anyone would love someone like you," which is a little cruel, but the girl just smiles, saying feelings can change without one even being in control of it. That leaves the Duke speechless for a few seconds. Ulikian speeds up his steps and tells her that if she's thinking about falling in love, she should give up right now because he has no time for games. Maddie just smiles, saying not to worry. She said that even if she died and came back, she'd never fall in love with anyone. So the two of them end the conversation, finishing their descent down the stairs. The Duke stands there staring at her. At that moment, Philip appears, calling him. The butler says it would be better if he stayed on the property, because something urgent came up. This worries the Duke that something could come up so suddenly, which shouldn't be possible, and he worries it might be about Maddie. With little choice, all he can do is ask a maid to accompany her. Ulikian goes to Maddie and asks her to listen carefully, but she already imagines what it is and says she won't steal, kill, or run away, which causes a reaction from the Duke. He asks her not to cause any trouble, and when she finishes the activities quickly, she should return, making it clear that just her track record alone is enough to cause gossip. Maddie holds his face, pulling it closer, and using the pet name asks him to stop complaining since she already understood everything. The girl quickly waves at the butler and the maid who arrived, leaving the two of them embarrassed.
Embarrassed.
Ulikian coughs in an attempt to break the mood and asks the maid to take good care of his fiancée. Rayleigh promises she will. With the two in the carriage, Maddie waves lovingly at the Duke. Now alone, the silver-haired man asks what this is about. The butler hands him the letter, leaving the Duke surprised to hear it's from the Emperor. The journey of the girls continues. Rayleigh doesn't seem at all happy about her future mistress. She keeps thinking Maddie is trying to seduce the innocent Duke to get something, and intends to make sure the intruder runs away in tears, utterly humiliated. Meanwhile, Maddie remains oblivious to her hatred and comments with surprise that even after passing the first gate, they're still in the garden area. The maid explains that it's just a garden annex to the mansion and they'll have to pass through another large gate to actually be outside. Maddie says it looks more like a park and is impressed. Maddie takes a look at the girl and asks if the position isn't a little uncomfortable. She asks her not to be so formal. She can speak however she wants. Her words leave the maid a little thrown off. Rayleigh explains that once the marriage happens, she'll be the lady of the house, so she can't just talk casually, but Maddie just laughs, asking her to relax and save that for when it actually happens, leaving her with nothing to argue. Rayleigh uses the intimacy as an opportunity to ask if she loves the Duke and accepted the proposal because of that. The bodyguard agrees. Maddie says their statuses are very different, something she can't control, and adds that he's innocent. She also mentions that if the relatives are against it, he might simply give up, which is why she's enjoying the time while she can. This makes Rayleigh change her way of thinking, believing she's different from what she imagined, so she tries to make things right by asking her to think about the fact that His Grace loves her and won't give up. Maddie answers that marriage isn't so easy. After all, they're only engaged and nothing is certain until they're at the altar. She then reveals she came from the slums and makes the other girl even more embarrassed by saying that if they had met outside, even the maid herself wouldn't have spoken to her. Maddie then touches her tense hands, changing the subject and asking if she's the one who'll choose her clothes since this is the first time shopping with someone. Rayleigh is genuinely surprised and asks if she has no siblings or family, which the bodyguard quickly denies. That leaves the maid really flustered, because for some reason this woman is kind of pitiful. Rayleigh reaches the conclusion that maybe she's just uneducated but could be a good person. The maid says not to worry because she'll choose the prettiest clothes. After all, it was the Duke's request. Maddie smiles, saying that even if she gets kicked out tonight, at least the trip to the boutique will be a cherished memory. She asks the green-haired girl's name. After Rayleigh introduces herself, Maddie does the same, extending her hand and asking her to feel free to call her whatever she wants. Rayleigh looks at her and thinks she's just a silly, innocent girl whom everyone thinks is a cunning fox trying to seduce the Grand Duke. That's why she decides to be kind, so she shakes her hand. Maddie goes back to looking out the window, with a mischievous smile, thinking she'll slowly pull the girl to her side, silently challenging her. She won't be kicked out that easily, even if she has to burn the Count of Montenezando's head. Speaking of him, the man is finally at the mansion. Ulikian receives his uncle. The man throws himself onto the sofa, saying the boy already knows about his arrival and says, "Who gave you the right to make such a ridiculous proposal?" Ulikian laughs about the uncle wanting to know about the woman. He explains she's getting ready to receive him, which is why she's a bit late. The Count says he needs to dress properly, and if he wears such cheap-looking clothes, it will diminish his dignity. He says he'll take care of it so he won't need to do anything, claiming he'll soon present a more suitable woman to stand by his side. But Ulikian turns down the offer. He's already fallen in love with someone. Count Montenezando yells that love doesn't put food on the table and claims he's just young and doesn't know any better, and tells the young man to listen carefully and have a little sense. After all, she's a woman from the slums. Suddenly, Maddie appears by his side, introducing herself, which leaves the man white as a ghost. Still startled, the Count asks if she's crazy and tells her to stop, while the girl innocently apologizes, saying she just thought he might have trouble hearing. Meanwhile, Ulikian looks completely lost. Maddie looks stunning, and he can't hold back the compliments. He can't resist going to her. The two take that small, intimate moment to talk, whether everything is okay, and the Duke says he was worried about it, but everything turned out better than he imagined. Smiling, Maddie tells him the maid did a great job and asks her fiancé to give her a bonus later. After exchanging information, the Duke gently asks his fiancé to sit. Meanwhile, the Count is nearly exploding with rage, hating all this lovey-dovey stuff from the couple, even wondering if this is the appropriate moment for his nephew to fawn over the girl. He finds the whole performance very vulgar. Count Montenezando observes that the girl does have a pretty decent face, but she still comes from the slums, so he just needs to scare her a little, and she'll certainly run off fast. Maddie winks at Ulikian and asks that now that his uncle's hearing is good, he can bring the drink she mentioned. Ulikian understands his partner knows what to do, so smiling, he just confirms. Meanwhile, the uncle, who hears everything, gets confused. Then a tray is brought with 3 glasses filled with a green liquid. Maddie receives them and says it was specially prepared for him. With a smile, she says it's absinthe. Count Montenezando looks at it in alarm, then asks if it isn't dangerous to drink too much. Maddie is pleased to confirm his question, adding that drinking too much at once will cause immediate death, and then says, "Even so, isn't it such a beautiful drink?" A battle begins in the Count's mind, wondering how that girl knows about poison, or if it's a mistake, and if it's true, why his nephew would be laughing so carelessly. The bodyguard's voice calling him makes him shudder. Maddie raises her glass, encouraging him to drink. The Duke also nervously eyes his own, and the brunette plays innocent, asking what's wrong, as if it's his first time trying absinthe. She asks, "If you're not sure, should I drink before you?" So Maddie does just that, leaving the Count horrified. Maddie drinks everything and says it's very good. When finished, she says it tastes so good that even if it were poison, she could swallow it all and die without noticing. Montenezando is nervous because he understands the woman knows he was behind the poisoning attempt and regrets not having paid attention this morning when he heard that Miley had gone missing. He just ignored it, assuming the man was just drunk somewhere, but now he realizes that's not the case. This makes him question whether the woman figured everything out and got rid of Miley. Looking at his nephew, he also wonders if he knows. While he's in anguish, Ulikian simply asks his uncle to congratulate them on the wedding. Count Montenezando gets distracted for a moment, asking the silver-haired one to control himself. Then when his eyes return to Maddie, he's startled by what he notices. In the girl's hand is the poison vial. Almost innocently, Ulikian asks if she brought a separate drink, and Maddie explains, "I heard absinthe tastes best when served little by little using a small glass bottle like this." Like a good fiancé, Ulikian smiles, just asking her not to overdo it since drinking too much is bad. Meanwhile, the Count watches all of this horrified, as if he's witnessing some kind of horror movie. Keeping an innocent face, Ulikian asks what's wrong and his uncle just stammers. Maddie also asks what's going on. She simply says, "You're acting like I just swallowed poison or something." The old uncle almost has a heart attack right there. Suddenly, Maddie faints in her beloved's arms, leaving the uncle in even more panic, saying that's exactly why she shouldn't have drunk all of it. He wants a doctor called immediately, but just as quickly as the girl fainted, she came back to life, laughing, saying he looks very tense about something, and explaining she was just pranking him. Even Ulikian laughs, saying he thought his heart was going to stop and that he really can't handle his fiancé's mischievous nature. Count Montenezando sits back down, still tense about the situation. He looks at the glass and the empty vial, which then falls to the floor and shatters into several pieces, increasing the tension even further. The Count quickly flees from this crazy couple, making up an excuse that he has no more time to stay. He gets into his carriage to leave. Meanwhile, the two laugh and Ulikian questions her for having drunk that horrible thing. Maddie laughs, explaining she switched them and of course takes the opportunity to provoke him by asking if he was worried. He asks if she got her revenge on the uncle. But the girl explains it was just a warning shot so they can slowly get permission for the wedding, which the Duke disagrees with since his uncle ran away from there scared to death. Maddie keeps provoking, saying that as long as the Count is alive they can get it, and advises him not to be so pessimistic. She goes up the stairs but before turning around declares, "From now on, anyone who tries to eliminate you, I'll handle without leaving a trace, so if you want to stay alive, trust me." That declaration leaves the silver-haired man shocked. He follows her and is surprised by the direction she's heading since it's not toward her room, but Maddie explains she has something to do. However, Ulikian demands she hand over the poison that was with Miley, thinking it's not a good idea to walk around with something like that. Maddie then stops, once again turns to him and says, "It seems what I drank earlier was actually real poison. Oops, I made a mistake." Hearing that, Ulikian freezes in shock, and already considers that the woman is going to die because of it. This sends him into a panic because he remembers what happened to his mother. Desperate, the Duke wants to call a doctor. He pulls the bodyguard to face him and asks her to just stay there, but Maddie takes action, pulling him closer into a hug while trying to calm him down, saying she's not going to die even if she takes poison. That's just how her body works. Calmly, she says she's alive and that she'll stay that way. The two pull apart. Maddie asks him not to show weakness in front of others or he'll be looked down on. She says people are watching and asks him to be careful, promising she'll be back soon. Ulikian is now paranoid, wanting to know who these people are that are watching him, whether his own servants or spies. From the way Maddie smiles, it seems like a silent confirmation. The Duke then makes the move of stepping closer, advising her to take a coat since it's very cold outside, and asks her to come home safely. Ulikian turns to go get his too, leaving Maddie behind wondering whether the man has any friends and not understanding why he gave her a kiss on the cheek out of nowhere just to say he was leaving. The sun is almost gone. A red-haired man is at his place when someone knocks on the door. When he opens it, a hooded figure is standing there, and he's surprised to see who it is. It's Maddie who's there. The woman is also being watched by someone lurking in the shadows. Inside, the red-haired man asks why she didn't respond to anything. He was starting to think it was just another drunk. She then explains she's being followed and if the information leaks, it'll be a problem. He's surprised that the woman let that happen even though she could easily get rid of the person. But Maddie explains it would be very suspicious if the person suddenly disappeared, so she chose to wait until their guard was down. The red-haired man, who is her brother, asks about the newspaper news that left him in complete shock. With sparkling eyes, he asks if she's trying to con the Grand Duke and asks if she's sure about this, whether she'll be spending the rest of her life on the run. Maddie regrets not having had time to explain to her brother. This red-haired man is Knox, a scrawny 15-year-old refugee boy she met on the streets. The two got into a small work conflict. Maddie returned a wallet to the owner that the kid had stolen, even though she had done the same. But that day, the woman explained that the gentleman was just trying to buy a birthday present for his daughter, and just by looking at the clothes, anyone could see he had saved every single penny. That only made the boy angry, knowing that some people have the chance to celebrate a day like that while he has nothing to do with any of it. Maddie then gave him a lecture. She advised doing those things with the rich and said, "Take from only those who sing a song and buy a melody and buy a new wallet without thinking twice." After that, she taught him how to steal and pull cons and even took him out to see the world, doing all kinds of work together. Back to the present, the young man asks if she plans to rob the Duke alone or with someone else. Of all the con artists Maddie has known, he's the best at acting and using his skilled hands. Knox touches his sister's shoulders still without an answer, then starts whining and begging her to take him along. Maddie then stops him and tells him to shut up. Her concern is that this time she won't just have to protect her own life but also take the lives of others, and she doesn't want to involve her brother in that, not to mention the risk of more people knowing about it. That's why Maddie surprises him by saying she's really going to marry the Duke. Knox is in shock since several idiots proposed to her before and now she's just doing it without any intention of running off with the dowry. He can't understand why. Maddie leaves him baffled by saying her fiancé loves her even knowing where she came from. The bodyguard tells him that the Duke knows a good part of her schemes and doesn't care, which is not exactly a lie. Knox panics, remembering his sister isn't just a difficult person to deal with. Still in shock, the kid sits down, revealing that after the announcement he did some research thinking it was another con. Knowing he's the only child of the late crown prince, having received the name Kun, which is passed exclusively to the direct heir. He should have been emperor, but after the death of his parents, the throne was taken by his father's younger brother. Knox knows that since then the Duke has been wandering through the slums, but there's nothing suspicious about him, not even a mistress or bastard children, just a pitiful life, and in the end, a good person. So the red-haired boy asks her not to marry him because the man is too pitiful, but Maddie doesn't like that at all, and knocks her brother to the ground. He asks if he's a bad person just for not wanting to ruin the life of an innocent man. Maddie again affirms they're getting married, and that's what he needs to accept. She finds a stray drink nearby and takes a sip, then asks her brother to find information about Count Montenezando and his entire family. Knowing who he is, Knox doesn't understand the reason, since as the Duke's uncle he should be on his side. So Maddie reveals that the man touched something that belongs to her, and must be punished for it. With wide eyes, Knox wants to understand what's so serious the man did to make his sister this angry. Of course Maddie is furious because he messed with her hard-earned money, and she intends to con him so completely that history will call it a masterpiece. Of course his sister's intentions make Knox's spine shiver. Knox seriously considers hiding at that moment everything that looks sharp and dangerous, but he just forces a laugh and says that if he messed with his sister's boyfriend, then he deserves a good lesson. The red-haired boy wants to know what kind of con she'll pull on the Count, just to pick the right approach, but Maddie says it doesn't matter what the job is since intelligence must come first. But Knox needs more details, like how far she wants to extract things. After thinking for a while, the bodyguard tries to decide whether she wants a little trouble, to take everything there is, or just to make sure no loose ends are left, but she still has a lot to think about. Knox panics because she initially said she didn't want to leave any loose ends, which made him think she was planning another cleanup job. Maddie surprises him by saying she's not going to eliminate the Count, and that's because it was a request from the Grand Duke, who told her not to go around eliminating people irresponsibly. That's too much for Knox to hear. The red-haired boy can't help feeling sick hearing that, while Maddie complains about him talking non-stop. Maddie asks him to listen carefully and tells him once more that the Duke proposed and she accepted because she likes him, but Knox wants to understand about Montezando, since it doesn't seem like she's just trying to wash her hands of it. Once again, the bodyguard says the Count messed with her fiancé, and on top of that he's an obstacle to her entry into society, the kind of thing that will keep bothering her non-stop. Knox finally understands her intentions. He even teases her, saying he wishes them a long and happy marriage, while Maddie puts her hood back on, warning she'll be back in 3 days. The young boy cheerfully waves goodbye to his sister. Now alone, he can think more clearly, thinking that if she insisted that much, then she really is in love. Knox goes to the wall, deep in thought. A secret passage opens. With little time, he needs to get moving. Meanwhile, Ulikian is in the comfort of his mansion reading the letter. The same one delivered by the butler with a message from the Emperor. The Emperor is expecting an answer from his nephew. The content of the letter is the man saying he'll choose a bride for him in his father's place. Those words are not pleasant, because the Emperor dared to say that after killing his own brother with his own hands and now wants to choose his bride. But Ulikian understands this is not an order, because if it were, it would already have been done. He figures the man wants to see him surrender. Ulikian throws the letter into the fire to burn those cursed words. Soon his mind is once again tormented by the past, with his mother very ill in her room, and him outside, frightened, unable to bear the painful coughing. The young boy feels like he did on that night. Ulikian enters a mental struggle because he needs to survive, and he will even if he has to crawl like a dog. But he can't even get revenge on whoever eliminated his parents. Someone enters the room. Ulikian raises his head to hear the person telling him she doesn't like mess or a violent husband. It's Maddie, who asks if something happened while she was away, since her dear fiancé seems to be in a bad mood. But Ulikian is a little rude, saying he has no patience for her right now, and asks her to leave and for them to talk the next day. But Maddie has a better proposal, going out together. She steps closer and touches his shoulders. Maddie then whispers that someone is watching them, that on the other side of the trees there's a shadowy figure. The bodyguard managed to gather a lot of information, like knowing the person doesn't appear to be armed, and isn't there to hurt anyone but simply to find out if the marriage is real. Nervously, Ulikian can only think it was sent by the Emperor. Maddie whispers that he's making it very clear how nervous he is, so she asks him to smile and show how much they love each other. She's the one who takes the initiative to pull him closer. The bodyguard whispers that even though she said so, he has to hold on tight. After all, she's not enjoying any of this either. But what can she do when she has 1 billion to earn? Even with all that display of affection, there's no real emotion in it. Ulikian then pushes her back slightly, but not too far, still keeping her close, and says, if you want to do this right, kissing you doesn't bother me at all. Maddie is surprised, but soon her scowl turns into a beautiful smile. Maddie comes close again and hugs him. Soon the two press their lips together in a kiss of false love. When they run out of air, they separate, but with Maddie's promise that she won't die again, Ulikian wants to test her soft lips once more. At this moment, the Duke enters a spiral of hallucinations with the woman's promises in his mind. The Duke and Maddie promised to take care of the people who will try to hurt him and asked him to trust her if he really wants to live. Her promises mix with the anguished sound of his mother's cough. Now the sound filling the room is a racing heartbeat, and Ulikian is afraid the woman will discover something. Meanwhile, Maddie continues the kiss, but with a watchful eye on the intruder outside. The two finally separate. Ulikian needs to control himself since they're only fulfilling the contract. However, the observer hasn't left yet, and Maddie wants to give a little more of the show. The Duke is surprised by her lack of a coat and asks why she's not wearing one. Then the woman says she didn't use it when she went out, having given it to the coachman, explaining that his gaze was filthy, and since she'll have to see him for 3 years, she doesn't want to spend that time walking on eggshells. Hearing that, Ulikian smiles and says she seems confident she'll survive the whole time. Maddie quickly changes the subject and surprises him by suggesting a new strategy to make the man leave. Stripping down, making the Duke's eyes go wide at the idea of doing that in front of a stranger. Maddie explains that either way she's wearing a white dress underneath, so he shouldn't worry about it. She's more confident and says the bastard still hasn't left, so he needs to be convinced of what's going on and go away. After that, she says with a smile, lucky that my beloved cleared the table earlier with such confidence, leaving the Duke completely stunned. But he takes action for that little theater. Ulikian even steps closer, but abruptly Maddie pushes him away. Maddie says after watching for a long time the man finally left, and lets out a sigh of relief. She had no idea how long she would have had to keep that up. She informs him that tonight's new strategy will be pushing the writing desk for 30 minutes before sleeping, but the Duke is still recovering from what just happened. Soon morning arrives. The Duke is woken up by someone knocking on the door. He quickly remembers the previous night, until he feels a blanket over his body and is surprised it's there. But then he's alarmed to realize what it is. It's Maddie's dress, and now the Duke is full of doubts about what happened. Did they separate? Did something happen while he was sleeping? And he hopes it's just that piece of clothing that's there. However, he wonders where the owner is. The Duke finds a package on the floor. Ulikian thinks Maddie should cover herself, and wonders why she put the dress with him. He then goes to wake up the bodyguard. Maddie only opens her eyes when she hears him say he'll give a special bonus. She immediately sits up. Maddie is happy with the smile the Duke holds and says he's adorable, and asks him to open the door, but not too much. Ulikian admits that shaking the writing desk was worth it, since it made the butler come over, and that leaves Maddie all confident, asking him to trust more in what she says. Finally, the Duke opens the door. The Duke complains about him being there so early, but Philip has terrible news and asks the silver-haired man to come to the reception room, because Sir Crocton Vine is there. Already dressed, Ulikian hurries to the meeting, already guessing that Vine is there because of the wedding news, which is good since he'd have had to introduce them at some point anyway. He just couldn't let the man see him in the state he was in, and hopes Maddie will also appear properly dressed. When he arrives in the reception room, a red-haired man is sitting there waiting for him. Ulikian enters and says it's rude to invade someone's home so early. Vine apologizes but was seriously worried about the wedding news, about the story of the two of them. From the very beginning they walked the same path, capable of sharing both prosperity and hardship, so when his father died and his uncle took the throne, Crocton never left his side. Instead, after completing his knight training and passing the exam to earn his title, he chose to return to the Duke. However, Ulikian never named him as a guard knight, and even though they didn't meet often, they were still friends with no secrets between them because the shadow of death being so close could never be allowed to reach Crocton. That was their bond, at least until the engagement was announced. Ulikian confirms about the marriage as if it's nothing big, while Vine is in shock that his friend never said anything before. Worried, he asks if he knows what kind of person he proposed to, and he knows quite a bit about the girl's background, coming from the slums. Confidently, Ulikian says he knows everything and fell in love anyway. Vine simply asks, "Are you serious?" That leaves the Duke tense for a few seconds. But soon he says everything is fine and confirms Maddie is a con artist. But he's the only one who probably saw that side of her. Concerned, Vine comments that just mentioning the girl made his friend smile, so he must really like her a lot. Thoughtful and obviously worried, the red-haired man asks if he's sure he's not being deceived. Ulikian laughs and says no, though secretly he's the one deceiving his friend. But his laughter doesn't last long when Sir tells him they saw Maddie with another man, making the Duke stop completely. Could Maddie actually have another man in her life? Vine gives all the characteristics of Maddie, along with her stealing habits and her being known as Crazy Maddie, and with all of this it's hard for the Duke to deny anything. The only thing he wonders is why he's angry. Ulikian asks about the man's appearance, wanting to know if he also has silver hair, but that leaves Vine confused. Then desperate, the Duke reveals that Maddie told him that men like that are her type, not caring that he's looking like a lunatic in front of his friend. Since knowing Maddie betrayed him after making a promise is too much, Vine affirms he's being deceived and that Maddie lives with another man, though he backs off from that claim and says some people saw her drinking with a guy. At this point, I'd already be suspicious about who was keeping tabs on her. With the red-haired man saying Maddie always drinks with the same person, Ulikian asks if she has a boyfriend, which isn't impossible since their thing is just a contract. Still, it's pretty bold to date someone else when they're in a public engagement, and he even introduced her to his uncle. Ulikian asks who the other person is. He also thinks it was all a lie, that talk about an ideal person. Meanwhile, Vine sits down and asks him to do the same and drink some water to calm down. Vine says he's a young man, tall, with auburn highlights in his hair. All the Duke can process is that he looks nothing like the type. Vine asks him to think carefully, making him realize that if he were truly her type, then she'd end up liking anyone with that look. But in the end, he accepts that Maddie is a liar and not at all reliable. Now that they've reached this point, Sir Crocton asks if he'll break up with her, but the Duke says no, which drives the red-haired man crazy. But either way, his visit was only to bring the information, so the Duke can do whatever he wants with it. Ulikian keeps saying he loves her and trusts her, and even with another man he's sure he'll be chosen. Then the red-haired man asks about someone named Astrid, asking if he said anything to that person. But with a serious face, Ulikian says to not mention that name. Vine says he can't run from this forever even if he gets married. It's something he'll have to deal with eventually. Ulikian calmly says that's someone the world must never know about, and the name Rondinez ends with me. It's better if nobody finds out. The red-haired man insists, asking if he'll leave things as they are. After all, he has nobody else there besides Ulikian. Makes it clear that he misses him terribly. Ulikian asks him to let that person know he'll be visiting soon. Startled, he looks to the side and notices something. Maddie is there standing watching them. In that moment, the Duke can only think about Maddie's supposed lover, so he forces a smile to act normally, and asks why she's just standing there instead of coming in. Maddie leaves him baffled by saying the two of them seem to be having an important conversation, so she preferred to wait outside. That leaves the Duke very worried because of the last topic they were discussing, wondering if she heard heard anything about Astrid. If that's true, it'll be very bad. Either way, Ulikian stays calm and introduces his fiancée to his friend. He introduces Vine as a knight of the Imperial Order and explains that since they're close friends, they'll be seeing each other often. The red-haired man isn't delicate when he says, "If she knows her place, she'll stay out of my way," leaving Maddie stunned, but she pokes at it, asking what kind of friend completely dismisses true love. Maddie still provokes, "Can you kiss His Majesty? Because I can," turning it into a battle of wills, with Vine pointing out how she lacks proper education and etiquette. While Maddie provokes back, saying if she'd also been born into the right family, she could easily be a knight, just a matter of waving a sword around. While picking up the sword, she asks if it's not just about handling it well, then she points the blade at his throat. Maddie provokes, asking if it isn't simple. Ulikian immediately intervenes, which makes the fiancé act pouty, complaining she was scolded first when the other one started it. The Duke also asks his friend to lower the sword and asks him to wait a moment because they need to talk. Vine stands there thinking about how he didn't notice when Maddie drew the sword. He didn't even feel it come out of the scabbard, realizing that woman is more than just a simple thief, and thinking that if she's Ulikian's bodyguard, it could interfere with his plans. With that, he can't let things continue and says, "You should have actually fallen in love." Meanwhile, the couple steps away from him. Maddie abruptly pulls his hand away. Looking irritated, she says there's nobody around, so he can just say what he wants. And as expected, Ulikian is irritated, trying to understand what happened. After all, he said the man is his friend, asking her to at least get along with Sir Crocton, and all Maddie does is ask why a friend would show up carrying a sword. He justifies that saying he's a knight, but that doesn't convince Maddie, a knight who skipped morning training just to make a visit, and on top of that with a sword and no uniform. Then she leaves him stunned by saying, "You're too naive for your own good." That leaves the silver-haired man furious. He says not everyone lies and deceives like she does. Maddie smiles, provoking him by saying that hurt, but she doesn't shrink when called a liar. In fact, she confirms it's true. Ulikian calls her name, makes the request for her to clean up her personal history. After all, she needs to live like a duchess for 3 years, and if anyone discovers the contract, it's all over, and leaves her confused by saying he doesn't care about the lovers. To add to the confusion, Ulikian gives Nox's description, leaving her surprised. He interprets her reaction as if she has more than one, and Maddie just finds it hilarious how much of an idiot he is. The woman says she doesn't care that he's a lovesick fool and runs off laughing at it. Ulikian watches her going toward a horse. Maddie simply mounts it as if she's been doing it for a long time, making the Duke realize how much of a liar she is. But what matters to the bodyguard right now is dealing with whoever is spreading the rumors. Maddie rides on, reflecting that in all her life he's the only one who allowed her to keep going. She knows he may have asked the slum residents, but there's absolutely no way they said she and Nox are a couple, so she concludes that Vine probably distorted the information or is the one responsible for sending the follower. Either way, he's the most suspicious person. Maddie arrives, dismounts, and pays someone to send a message back to the Duke's house, making it very clear what could happen if the boy tries to be clever and divert along the way. While entering the place, she remembers the strange conversation between those two, about that Astrid person and how Ulikian intended to let the name Rondinez disappear along with him. Maddie removes the headscarf and uses it to tie her hair. With that, she says, "Before fulfilling your wish, why don't we first find out your secrets and your friends too?" So 2 days pass. Maddie is wearing completely worn out old clothes while lurking in the shadows. She's been tailing Vine, and in all that time she discovered he's not just an ordinary knight. On top of that, he's been missing morning training quite a lot. She also noticed that during the week 3 bottles of milk are delivered, but on weekends only 2 arrive. To the woman, that means someone of high rank must be behind Crocton, someone who can afford to let him skip morning training, and he always heads somewhere on the weekends. He has a strategy of switching the carriage horses to hide his destination. Meanwhile, the red-haired man watches people dancing happily in the street, concluding they must be gypsies. With that, the young man enters a place. Maddie, who is disguised, keeps a close eye on everything, and noticing this, the boy she danced with explains that that house doesn't give out food, which the woman falsely laments about, and he explains a single mother lives there with her child, so the situation isn't good, and suggests going to the other more generous neighborhood to get food. Maddie thanks him and says goodbye, telling him to use the reward as a blanket. With the information she got, the woman thinks about how her client has some dirty secrets. Astrid is a name used only by nobles, and the fact that he's the last Rondinez means it's from the Duke's bloodline, so Maddie believes it's an illegitimate daughter who can't be in the family records. Maddie wonders why the Duke hid this even though he revealed his life is being threatened by the Emperor. She thinks that as his bodyguard she must be prepared for any possible variable, and if Astrid is the Duke's weakness, then she must be even more prepared. Meanwhile, at the Duke's mansion, the servants talk about Maddie being away for 3 days. The coachman comments he thought she'd be back soon since he sent her off with a distraction. Rayleigh says that earlier the Duke asked if Maddie had taken anything when she left, which she finds outrageous, defending that the woman would never do something like that. She remembers when they went to the boutique and she asked how many dresses she'd buy, but an innocent Maddie asked if they weren't just there to buy something for receiving guests, or whether it was just one outfit. But Rayleigh goes crazy saying she needs outfits for various occasions as well as normal clothes to wear at home. That's why she's completely disappointed in the Duke for suspecting her. The housekeeper scolds her for talking about the Duke that way and says the problem is with whoever disappeared for 3 days without saying a word. The coachman also believes Maddie isn't a bad person, just a little rough in the way she speaks. He tells them that last time the woman asked him to take her to the slums. When they got there, Maddie asked if he had a daughter. She also complimented the dandelion bracelet on his wrist. Maddie left him a little thrown off when she asked about the drawing on it and said she really loved it. With that, she takes off her coat, then asks him to give it to his daughter, surprising the man. With that voice that wins everyone over, Maddie says they're in situations where they can't live well, so they need to help each other even if just for a moment, and tells him how she always wanted to wear pretty clothes when she was little. She says they'll see each other often, so he should stop staring at her as if he's upset and instead keep things friendly between them, and suggests that even if she gets kicked out, they should part the same way. With that, the coachman says the woman may not have had the best upbringing, but she has a kind heart, which Rayleigh obviously agrees with. Ivan is also there and accuses the girl of having fallen for her. He says the Duke isn't sleeping or eating properly for 3 days and gives the servants a scolding for being on that woman's side. Rayleigh keeps defending her, saying Maddie isn't that kind of person and would calmly accept being sent away, so she would never leave without consulting the Duke first. Very irritated, Ivan disagrees. After all, Maddie hasn't come back yet and she could only be in the slums looking for another man. And of course the maid won't accept anyone thinking that about her new protege. While the two of them argue, the coachman notices something through the window. It's Maddie who's back. Meanwhile, Ulikian is in his study lamenting Maddie's disappearance. She didn't even say where she was going. She did this after having told him she wouldn't let him die. The Duke thinks about how not everyone lives by deceiving others the way the woman does. Ulikian also considers the possibility that Maddie is hurt, or that maybe it's something that wasn't in the contract, and she's upset because he told her to get rid of the lover. Furiously slamming the table, he at least expected it to be something they wouldn't find out about, a well-kept secret. But even so, Maddie simply disappeared without saying a single word. On top of that, leaving behind 1 billion, which makes him think there might be someone she cares about deeply enough. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, putting the Duke on alert. They announce Maddie's return, but the state the girl is in isn't exactly the best. Ulikian stares at his fiancée with a mix of concern. He walks up to her, complaining that she left without telling him a word and didn't come back either, and asks if she was meeting someone and why she looks so unkempt. Maddie suggests they talk inside, but Ulikian doesn't listen, consumed by anger and wanting to know if she spent 3 days with a lover and if he upset her when he told her to handle it. Ulikian tries to control his anger, but in front of everyone he says, "I told you I'd give you everything." The Duke is desperate and reminds the woman she promised she'd always be by his side. Maddie holds his hand, trying to calm him down. She says she came back to his side and asks him to look at her. Maddie's eyes are filled with love. Ulikian knows all of that is acting, yet he can't understand why he feels all of it, so he turns away, moving away from her, and says, "If you're going to leave, at least warn me before you go, even if you're leaving for good." Calmly, Maddie says she refuses to do that, which triggers anger in the Duke. While she steps closer, Maddie says she won't leave him. She says she'll be by his side from now on and forever. Ulikian seems to calm down. Then he turns to her smiling, knowing that either way everything is a lie. In the end, he just says, "Do whatever you want," and it's understandable that he's upset. Rayleigh, who is there watching the scene, comments she's never seen His Grace raise his voice like that before, and asks Maddie if she's okay. The girl tries to apologize for it, saying the Duke must be feeling a bit overwhelmed, since it's the first time he's experiencing love, and the coachman tells her the boss also hasn't been eating or sleeping properly. Speaking of food, they offer her something to eat, but the head chef doesn't seem the least bit interested in making even a simple soup. Once again, Rayleigh and Ivan get into a fight because the man refuses to serve even the leftover dinner or make a soup. Maddie speaks up, saying she doesn't need soup and thanks them for their concern. Still, Rayleigh can't ignore how exhausted the woman looks and suggests she rest while she waits for someone to bring a little water. The maid notices Maddie is crying, which worries her even more, asking what's wrong and if it's because the Duke got angry. Maddie says it's nothing like that, she's happy. The housekeeper who's there throws in her face that she spent 3 days away without saying a word, so what exactly does she have to be happy about? Maddie cries even more. Emotionally, she says she didn't expect him to be waiting for her, moving everyone around her by saying it's the first time anyone has done that. The woman says she never noticed that if she didn't come back, someone might actually get really angry. Maddie says she never cared about those things before, that leaving meant being forgotten, which always seemed natural, and she lived thinking that was just how things were. Emotionally, she says having someone up late, keeping the lights on, waiting for her, there's just no other way to feel about it. In the end, she apologizes for it, and everyone around is already falling apart in tears. The coachman says there's no way the Duke could have ignored everything and not worried if she didn't come back. Still emotional, he asks the chef to make a soup, or at least hand over some leftover ingredients, and asks the man to think of it as serving a guest. But luckily, Ivan is emotional enough to offer soup and is already ready to grill meat too. Maddie tries to stop him saying she had a little bread, but the man is already heading to the kitchen. Then it's the housekeeper's turn, who says the people waiting for her will always be there. The bodyguard in the end accepts all the love from the servants. However, the housekeeper asks what she was doing that required being away that long. Without an adequate answer, she questions whether there's really another man involved, which Maddie quickly denies. Maddie says she thought the Duke's marriage proposal was a joke, but after spending a few days there she realized it wasn't, and so she started wanting to be loved. That's why she came back to pack her things and donated her old clothes and that sort of thing. Maddie says that if she gets kicked out of there it'll be strange to stay in the city, and since she's a wanderer it wouldn't be a problem to just leave. Once again that night she leaves the women emotional. The housekeeper scolds her for thinking about leaving with the Duke being that worried, and Rayleigh pleads for mercy, asking not to scold Maddie since she's not used to these kinds of things. At that moment, Ivan shouts from the kitchen asking why the girl still hasn't shown up to eat. Maddie is guided by the women and asks them to join her so she doesn't eat alone. The maid explains they normally don't eat in the dining room, and that's where guests sit. Rayleigh adds that the way they're treated doesn't make much difference. Meanwhile, Ivan reminds Maddie she's there as family and reinforces for her not to forget they'll always be waiting for her to come back. The servants join in, and even the coachman is there, suggesting bringing some drinks. Maddie thinks that's perfect. They celebrate the new family member, and the bodyguard secretly celebrates having won the hearts of all the servants, just as she planned. The next day arrives, and with it another visitor. In the carriage, the Bartolos siblings talk with the girl, assuring her everything will be fine. She steps out of the carriage, ready to fulfill the order given by the Emperor on her own. Inside the mansion, all eyes go toward the door. Seeing the girl there, she greets the Grand Duke saying she's happy to finally meet him. This is Shalome from the Count Bartolos family, with the notice that the Emperor ordered them to attend the imperial ball together. Ulikian is surprised to hear the family name. After all, Count Bartolos is the Emperor's close aide and loyal dog, and he suspects this family played a role in his father's death. Even so, they had the nerve to send this girl without a single word. Not to mention that this order to attend the ball with her is no different from declaring his engagement to the girl, a clear way of saying the Duke is a puppet in their hands. Ulikian smiles graciously. Meanwhile, Shalome walks in with her luggage, ordering that she needs her own room as well as servants' quarters and 3 or 4 of those, and asks to be introduced to the maids who will help her. She stops in the middle of the hallway when Ulikian becomes a living wall, blocking her way. Severely, the Duke asks if he invited her to be his partner and says the girl has no sense at all and makes it clear he has no intention of going to the ball with her and asks her to return home, leaving the girl surprised by his words. The Duke ignores her shocked face. Then he's taken by surprise by a drunk Maddie. The woman grabs him and with great boldness kisses him. When the kiss ends, they're still close with their breathing heavy, until Maddie releases her fiancé. This is her way of wishing him good morning, and she still challenges him to catch her. The Duke can only think the woman has lost her mind. Meanwhile, the Countess is in complete shock at what just happened. Remembering her presence, Ulikian turns to inform her that that's his lover, regretfully that she came all this way, but he advises her to immediately return home, and adds, "As you can see, I need to fight to capture my beloved." Shalome doesn't even get a chance to protest, because soon all the other servants just join in the chaos, simply because Maddie grabbed the furious chef's money. Ivan calls her a crook because of that, and Rayleigh doesn't care about that and asks if someone like that can also be a duchess. The coachman confirms it can, and they all agree the crook Maddie will become one. The butler, on the other hand, has other things to deal with, sadly telling the Countess that unfortunately his grace gave no further response, asking the girl to return home. But Shalome is furious that besides the slum girl, even the servants treat her as if she doesn't exist. The Lady Bartolos' response is to slap the butler across the face. Furious, she shouts that it's disrespectful to dismiss her like that, and provokes by asking if there's nobody in that house who knows how to do their job right. The butler apologizes for it, claiming that last night there was a small celebration, and the servants were very rude to her, and once again asks for forgiveness for what was done to her. But nothing calms this girl down. She demands a room for herself since she's there on the Emperor's orders. The man reminds her once again that even so, the Grand Duke asked for her departure, and there's simply no way he could ignore his orders. Shalome uses that same argument about the Emperor's orders, asking if they're to be ignored, and if so, the butler is a fool and insolent. The butler remains firm, only fulfilling his duty to serve his master, and asks her to return on the day of the ball as his majesty ordered. With that, the Countess delivers another slap for being kicked out. She raises her hand again to attack him while insulting him, but at that moment Maddie appears and stops her. She tells the Countess that the grandfather lying on the floor has a granddaughter her age. Maddie then yanks the glove off Shalome's hand and throws it at her face, leaving the Countess completely stunned. The bodyguard keeps that smile of hers and says that's the etiquette rule for a duel that her instructor taught her. Shalome struggles, asking to be let go, and one of the girl's maids joins in, demanding she be released. Maddie responds to that by kicking the intruder. All the other servants who came with the Countess suffer her fury, and of course she's well-mannered, having removed the glove from each one for a fair duel. The gloves are thrown at Shalome, who asks her to stop and to let go of her arm. Maddie responds that she just wants her to accept the challenge. Then she turns to Philip asking if women can duel. The man says it's rare but not the first time. Then Maddie starts throwing a tantrum because the girl won't accept, and even whines asking if it's because she's not a noble. Tired of it, Shalome ends up accepting in the end, finally making the bodyguard release her. Shalome can now get a better look at her wrist, noticing how red it is, which infuriates her. She takes out her fury by hitting Maddie. Maddie, despite this, seems a little amused at what just happened. And when that happened, the Duke witnessed the scene and yelled at Maddie, asking how she had the nerve to do something like that. Shalome looks hopeful. For her, the Duke finally witnessed the depravity of this filthy villain. Like a poor victim, Shalome raises her bruised arm to show him, but Ulikian simply walks past her as if he didn't even see her. The Countess spends a few seconds processing what just happened. Then she turns to see the scene. Maddie is in the Duke's arms, saying she's in a lot of pain and also complaining the blonde didn't accept the challenge and still hurt Philip. Shalome defends herself, calling the woman crazy and telling her version that besides having her wrist grabbed, her subordinates were also attacked. But Ulikian says she hurt his butler, who is practically family and his beloved. The Countess still tries to justify it by saying Philip expelled her and then stood in her way like a stubborn child. But the Duke sees no problem with that. After all, he's the one who wouldn't let her enter his home, so the butler only fulfilled his wishes. And she hit his beloved. He asks if that isn't a huge disrespect. Ulikian orders her to leave immediately, with the serious warning that he doesn't intend to repeat himself. Shalome is reluctant, questioning how he dares expel her even with the Emperor's orders and her father's. The Duke then reminds her of his title and says if she insists so much, then she should wait in front of the Imperial Palace on the night of the ball. Maddie interrupts them, asking the girl if she remembers having accepted the duel, leaving the Countess a little confused. With a smile, the bodyguard says she should be doing something fun then, and gives her a push, knocking Shalome completely out on the floor. But before that happened, about 20 minutes earlier, the Duke was looking for his fiancée, remembering what happened and thinking it was a bit too much, especially being done in front of a stranger. Ulikian is convinced he'll make Maddie stop kissing him like that, since there's no need for unnecessary contact when it's not even a crucial moment. Once again, the Duke is caught by surprise. It's Maddie who grabs him, then asks him to be quiet, explaining she's going out to provoke the girl, and when the right moment comes, he should stop everything and stand by her side. Maddie says it's something like a prince, and asks if he understood. Ulikian is a little lost for words. However, the Duke only thinks that the night before he didn't get a proper explanation. Maddie laughs, remembering what it's about, and of course teases him for it, and he tries to play it cool, saying the problem is that she left without saying a single word. Ulikian says it's a matter of trust, and if she disappears like that, there's no guarantee she's not running away. Maddie understands that, however she can't inform him every single time. But Ulikian pushes back, saying it's necessary, and she should at least say she's leaving. The bodyguard has a way to solve that, and explains that if she ever disappears and they still find valuable objects where she was, then he can relax because it's a sign she hasn't abandoned him. She has to explain to her confused fiancé that if she had left, she would have taken everything of value from the mansion. Ulikian asks what he should do in that situation, whether he should report it or try to find her. The thief says no to both. Maddie says in that case he should just wait, because she'll definitely come back, saying she'll return to his side of her own free will. In the end, Maddie says, "You'll have to stay by my side later, understood, my prince?" Ulikian just murmurs in agreement. But now, after everything that happened, the Duke didn't imagine things would be quite so rough. The two lock themselves in the study, so Ulikian can scream freely, asking what she was thinking when she attacked Miss Bartolaz. Playing dumb, Maddie says the girl challenged her to a duel, so she accepted and landed a hit. But the Duke is completely desperate because Maddie could simply be executed for insulting a noble, and if that happens, they won't be able to get married. Maddie tries to calm him down, saying she's doing this for the money, but the Duke still can't understand it and questions whether she didn't realize the size of the mess she created. Maddie makes a lame excuse that she just wanted to provoke her, but that other girl kept going, and since she's used to using her hands, she went a little beyond the line. She asks if inviting Shalome and inviting her to the ball would fix things. Ulikian is baffled by the idea and asks if it's really okay to do that. Maddie reminds him that either way, it's an order from the Emperor. So the Duke remembers she's his fiancée and it's already been officially announced. But Maddie still thinks it's a way to fix things. With that, the Duke falls silent, thinking that after everything she said, the bodyguard is creating a new story as if they were two complete strangers. He doesn't understand Maddie's intentions, or maybe he's just being a little petty. Still, without saying anything, Ulikian walks toward the door. With Maddie's call, the Duke reveals he's going to the Emperor, just to say he loves her and therefore can't go to the ball with Shalome. Maddie is completely stunned. She goes after the Duke, asking if he has any secret lover or anything like that she should know about, using the excuse that if any scandal comes out, she needs to know so she can handle it. Obviously, the Duke denies having anything like that. Maddie is genuinely surprised, then laughs and makes light of it, but in the end accepts the answer. Maddie then says goodbye to him, asking him to come back alive. So the Duke leaves, leaving Maddie behind, saying, "My love, Astrid certainly knows how to say things that hurt." Meanwhile, Ulikian is at the Emperor's palace. He follows the man who leads him to his majesty, authority, who granted an audience. The Duke sighs and lament because he was made to wait for 2 hours and wasn't even offered tea, and yet his uncle allowed a meeting more easily than expected. The young man announces the Duke's arrival to the Emperor. The doors of the throne room open, revealing the Emperor and Empress waiting. The uncle greets him. Ulikian already bows in respect to his authority. In parallel, we see what's happening at the Duke's residence. Philip is sitting in a chair with an annoying bruise on his face. Maddie arrives with some eggs in hand, asking how things are going, and is delighted that in his answer the butler also called her lady but asks him to be more casual. The man smiles at her and then asks what she's doing there. Smiling, Maddie says she brought an egg for each of them, and even jokes about the situation, saying that girl isn't so bad at punching someone. Maddie places an egg on the bruised face and sighs with pleasure at the relief from the pain. Taking advantage of that moment together, Philip asks how she knew he had a granddaughter her age, which the bodyguard says without any surprise. Someone as old as him having grandchildren wouldn't be surprising. But suddenly she worries she was wrong and that he might not be married. Philip laughs and explains he has a wife who now waits for him on the other side of life, but his children have already built their own families. Maddie wants to ask him a question that the butler is very pleased to answer, so she asks if the Grand Duke has another woman besides her. That leaves Philip baffled while Maddie bursts into tears saying the Duke never says anything but she still has the feeling there's someone else. With a sad look she says that if she gets thrown out she'd like to know in advance. Philip assures her that Ulikian only has eyes for her, but Maddie resists, saying sometimes she sees him staring intensely south through the window, and that sometimes while sleeping he calls out for someone named Astrid. She laughs and makes the excuse that from living outdoors she's a light sleeper, and that either way she wishes she hadn't heard that. She makes the butler a little sad when she says that even if she leaves the place she'll keep writing to him from time to time, and plays her final card by adding, "Unless you'd prefer I didn't." So finally, Philip reveals it's not another woman, but rather his hidden niece. Maddie can't hold back the shock, especially knowing the Duke is an only child. Philip has to ask her to lower her voice. With all that emotion, Maddie even dropped her egg on the floor. The butler asks her to sit so he can continue talking about it. He tells her the Duke has a twin sister, and Maddie doesn't understand why nobody knows about the girl, if everyone believed he was an only child. Once again, Philip shocks her by revealing the reason. The twin was not physically complete from birth. With that, another egg was broken, and the butler thinks he'll have a lot to teach her. The butler says this may not seem like a big deal, but in noble society, it's a sign of a serious flaw. He tells her the girl couldn't even open her left hand. Even as she grew, her hand remained the same, as if it were still a baby's. After a lot of deliberation, the parents decided that to protect her from the terrible world, they declared she had died at birth. With the approval of the imperial court, it was then publicly announced. The girl never left the palace but had a happy life with her highness until the day Prince Haldan passed away. After that, a fire broke out in the old crown prince's palace. By this point, Maddie is completely furious with the story. Furious that there are too many coincidences happening at the same time and that it's very clear someone set the place on fire on purpose. But Philip says if she knows that even without it being brought up as a big issue. Continuing the story, the widow, who was always a sensitive person, was terrified by the possibility of her daughter's existence being revealed and leading to an assassination attempt. So since it had been a secret from birth anyway, she decided to let the girl grow up outside as an ordinary person. Quickly, Maddie understands that after that she grew up, got married and had a child, but Philip only responded with a probably, leaving her not understanding the reason. The butler explains that after sending the girl away, the widow cut off all contact, perhaps thinking it was safer that way, so they never heard any news but believe she lived well. Maddie just doesn't understand yet how the Duke knows about the niece, but unfortunately Philip can't say. But Philip makes it clear that the only person Ulikian wants right now is her. That surprises the bodyguard. She smiles and thanks him for that. Maddie gets excited and declares her love for the Duke is great as the earth itself, that she's felt it since the very first moment she saw him. She knows she has to protect him, declaring she'll give him everything she's stolen up until now and everything she'll steal in the future. Maddie says that even if she has to take happiness from others, she'll make sure Ulikian is happy because since the moment their eyes met she's been thinking about protecting his future. Philip gives a genuine smile asking her to take care of Ulikian, and now he understands why His Majesty chose her. Meanwhile, Ulikian continues traveling in his carriage. He's quite tense because he really did have to do some crazy things. We go back to 1 hour earlier. The Emperor asks the Grand Duke to lift his head and show his face. All of that just to tell the young man how much he looks more and more like the late Emperor, which he finds ironic, as do others, since he is his son and still the grandson who resembles him most. Ulikian says he's simply grateful for His Majesty to see that in a good light, but he thinks about how before, when the man came to power, he executed anyone who challenged him for not resembling the previous emperor, and now he's greeting him this way. Unlike the older brother, Rafadit inherited his mother's features, which always made him the subject of gossip. So he believes that's perhaps why he simply eliminated without mercy the sources of those rumors, as soon as he took the throne, including his own mother. It was also strange when they said such a frail woman who couldn't even walk supposedly took her own life. And even if it's speculation, it seems very likely it was actually a murder. Ulikian gets straight to the point, mentioning he's offering a ball. Rafat confirms it, saying it's a celebration for the 14th birthday of Princess Miele, and as a cousin he hopes he'll be present. The Duke confirms that. However, he says there's someone he loves and therefore can't accompany Lady Bartolos, who was arranged for him. Rafat is direct and asks if this is about the woman from the slums, and asks if he doesn't realize no matter how beautiful she is, this will risk the future of the Dukel couple, putting a leash on a street dog. Ulikian defends that he intends to build a quiet life and a family without disgracing His Majesty's name, but the Emperor silences him, finding it ridiculous, questioning how he brought a wild animal home and still expects a peaceful life. Ulikian clenches his fists in fury, aware his uncle probably investigated the rumors about Maddie, but he didn't come there expecting this. But the Duke has a move to make, understanding that at that moment, the best answer is to be just as shameless as Maddie herself, and declares that no matter how much he understands, his heart won't change. Rafat asks if he really doesn't understand what it means for a Duke to marry a woman with a reputation of unknown origin. Ulikian plays dumb, saying he loves her, and that if his father were alive he would have supported his son's love. The Duke fills the Emperor with declarations of love, saying how much he loves Maddie, how he can't be away from her, wanting her forever, wanting a family with children who look like her, wanting to grow old by her side. He says he loves her so many times that the Emperor has a meltdown. Rafat says that whether what he says is true or not, he'll only decide at the right moment, but for now he wants him gone since he's tired of hearing all of it. His Majesty demands the guards remove him. Even so, Ulikian doesn't stop talking, comparing how even the Emperor loves his Empress, so surely he would understand his feelings, even if love is really difficult. With eyes full of tears, he demands permission to love her freely. Ulikian still can't believe what he's doing, but thanks to this the rumors will spread throughout the palace, and now all that's left is the ball. After announcing his arrival, he notices Maddie isn't there. Rayleigh appears out of nowhere saying the woman went out in the afternoon, which infuriates the Duke about not being informed. As for Maddie, she's back at that place since 3 days have passed, and she wants to know what was discovered about Count Montenezando, but right now Nox just wants to understand the reason for the disguise. So the sister tells him that the Duke thought he was her boyfriend, and so she decided to keep up appearances since it would be a hassle if the rumors came back. And well, Ulikian was already very upset. In a panic, the red-haired boy asks if she at least told him they were siblings, which Maddie denies, only leaving the boy desperate, trying to understand why she didn't do that. Maddie just says not to get upset. She already handled it so there won't be any rumors, which makes Nox think she really does have a boyfriend. Maddie denies it and explains she found out who was spreading the false rumors and dealt with it. The girl also thinks it's better for her fiancé not to know her love life isn't even complicated. Maddie explains the Duke is just clumsy with everything and thinks it's better if he keeps not understanding so things seem more real. But Nox completely disagrees, thinking it's the most idiotic reason he's ever heard. The red-haired boy is in despair since he's the target of the gossip. Maddie immediately changes the subject, wanting to know about the Count. Nox tells her that Montenezando was one of the few relatives who kept in contact with the Duke. All the others completely cut ties with him after the death of the former crown prince and his wife, which makes sense since they didn't want to go against the Emperor. Hearing that, Maddie comments that the Count doesn't seem like someone who's around out of pure sympathy. That's when Nox decided to investigate more deeply, discovering that the family was truly on the verge of bankruptcy, with the Count having lost all his money at horse races, and the Countess's extravagant spending almost left them without a roof over their heads, until suddenly the finances mysteriously stabilized. Nox says that apparently the Countess's mother died and left the inheritance to them, and everyone deduced the Count was a good son-in-law who took care of her. But Maddie knows the Count's dirty secrets, openly having an affair with a woman from the racetrack while the Countess was cheating on him with her own knight, so there was no possibility of being on good terms with the family. Nox is surprised his sister knows that part, and Maddie explains the cheating knight keeps bad-mouthing everyone at the tavern, not even able to play cards properly. She heard him bragging about having an affair with a noble, something she didn't pay attention to at the time. Now the question is who paid off the Count's debts, but Nox couldn't trace the origin of the money even with all the investigation. Maddie believes it's because all of this was hidden by someone with great power, and knowing there aren't many people in the country who could pay the Count's enormous debt, it must be someone close to the Emperor. She intends to pressure the wife for her share of the money and do the same with the Count separately, consequently making the Emperor realize they're a lost cause and discard them. Without support, they won't have the power to oppose the marriage. With that, Maddie is going to start spreading rumors about the Countess's affair. Nox is impressed she's going this far just to get permission for a marriage and believes she must love the Duke. The bodyguard smiles and ironically agrees. Maddie has a new order for Nox to dress as an aristocrat from head to toe and go to the racetrack and start making money. She asks him to make sure the Count notices his presence. And now Nox wants to know what to do when he takes the bait. Maddie explains he should become his friend and teach him some secrets for picking good horses, letting him win a few rounds and then introduce him to an underground high-stakes gambling game. With Knox's fear that the man simply won't accept, Maddie smiles, assuring him a compulsive gambler can never stop playing unless they cut off his hands. Knox smiles mischievously, remembering it's been a while since he last pulled a con on a noble. So 2 days pass and the day of the ball arrives. Shalomi is already at the palace entrance, desperately wanting to get in. She wonders if the Duke as her partner will dare to leave without even greeting her. The girl is furious because besides the Duke rudely rejecting the Emperor's order, her brother lured her there, and he'll still be late because of work. Her hope is to find Ulikian so they can enter together. Shalomi looks for him until she notices his carriage, which excites her. But soon her last hope fades, because who steps out is Maddie, and of course Ulikian is there as her companion. The two take the opportunity to tease each other, Maddie saying she feels like running away right now, and Ulikian responding that if she does she'll become a wanted person across the country. Meanwhile, Shalomi stares at them in disbelief. That awakens her fury. She criticizes Maddie for arriving so extravagantly to the ball where the princess is the star, but she doesn't care much about that since her priority is to enter with the Duke. So the Countess calls the couple's attention, asking them to enter the palace together. Ulikian stares at her with contempt, asking if she was waiting for him there, which she shouldn't have been since he never agreed, and leaves her humiliated by saying Maddie is his companion. Shalomi shouts that the Emperor himself ordered the two of them to enter together, but what she says is in vain. Once more, the Duke makes it clear about his partner, and even offers the girl to walk alongside them, which infuriates Shalomi, finding it outrageous to have to walk next to a woman from the slums. She ends up saying that insulting her is the same as insulting the Count Bartolo's household, and threatens to tell about Maddie hitting her. Hearing that, the silver-haired man smiles and says, "I am the Grand Duke and the only nephew of the Emperor. Do you think the daughter of a simple count can treat me rudely without consequences?" Ulikian turns around saying that if she doesn't want to disobey the Emperor's order, she should follow behind, because at least that much he'll allow. Shalomi is unsure and about to refuse that offer, until she looks back and realizes her little drama has quickly become gossip material. That only infuriates her. In the end, she accepts the offer to walk behind them. They then proceed to the entrance, handing over the invitation. The doorman with sharp eyes takes a good look and says, "Only people with an invitation may enter." Obviously, Ulikian won't allow that, saying the person by his side is his beloved. Finding it outrageous, she wouldn't have permission. Maddie tries to smooth things over, saying there's nothing to be done and she'll wait alone in the carriage. Without giving a chance, she turns and wishes him a wonderful evening. Shalomi watches all of this, and when Maddie passes by her side, she comments that this is a tough barrier of status to break. Maddie starts crying, and desperate, repeating everything the Countess just said. Maddie says the status barrier is between them and they love each other so much and she'll be there waiting for him even if he might abandon her. While Ulikian goes after her, saying he'd never abandon her no matter what, that they'd always be together forever, and even if she tried to run he'd go after her. As stated, the Duke really does catch her, stopping her escape. The two are about to kiss, until Shalomi interrupts them, trying to pull him away from the commoner. Ulikian asks her to wait for him, promising he won't look at anyone else. And so he leaves, leaving his beloved behind. The commotion caught the attention of the arriving guests. Everyone talks about the beautiful girl from the slums who's going to marry the Grand Duke, finding the whole situation somewhat romantic. And of course, in the end, it was all a plan, and Maddie smiles because it worked. In parallel, the party is happening with some nobles already in the venue. Shalomi, who entered accompanied, is practically alone, since the Grand Duke is looking out the window not wanting to be bothered, which generates comments even among the waiters for him not eating anything. The bigger problem is that the gossip extends to the nobles, who comment that the Duke's strange behavior is because his fiancée wasn't invited. They comment about Ulikian having been forced to accompany Shalomi and yet turning his back on a Bartolo's because he loves the other woman too much. Ulikian hears someone calling him. It's the Emperor's only daughter, his little cousin Miela Paragon Rondine. The Duke congratulates the princess. The two seem too shy to know how to act, until the girl, a little nervously, says she's going to leave. With that, Miela walks away. The little princess then goes to her parents. Rafadit asks if she managed to talk to her cousin. Miela surprises them by saying her cousin seemed a little indisposed and tired. Rafadit looks at his wife as if looking for help dealing with the situation. The Emperor gives a gentle smile, saying the girl was excited to see her cousin after such a long time, so he understands it must have been disappointing, and he promises to arrange a meeting for her. Miela leaves with her mother to greet the newly arrived guests. Left behind, the Emperor realizes how far things are going and that his nephew is truly being serious. Meanwhile, Ulikian stays in the same spot. Behind his hand, he hides his smile as he realizes Maddie was right once again, because when the party ends, the things people will remember won't be the princess's celebration or even Shalome's debut with the Grand Duke, but rather the love story between him and Maddie will spread through the noble circles and grow every time someone tells it. He thinks Maddie's words were a little much, but after causing the commotion at the Imperial Palace, this doesn't even compare. Suddenly, someone comes to the Duke and informs him that a gentleman simply grabbed the young lady he brought and refuses to let her go. Without wasting time, Ulikian leaves the ball in a hurry, understanding he needs to find Maddie immediately. He knows that if he's not fast enough, that man is going to die. Outside, a man is holding Maddie's wrist with absolutely no intention of letting go. He seems surprised to be alive, but the bodyguard has absolutely no idea who this gentleman is. Maddie says he must have confused her with someone else, but the man just smiles, then simply thanks the gods for her having survived, saying it's something he always believed. He continues saying he never doubted she'd come back, calling her by the name Yan and asking if she has any idea how devastated he was when he thought he'd lost her. At that moment, Maddie is genuinely furious and demands the man reveal who he is. The man says his name is Lambda. Suddenly, the image of a boy calling her Yan flashes in her mind. Maddie is scared by that memory, but then Ulikian appears at that moment, grabbing Lambda's wrist while demanding he stay away from his fiancée. That seems to have left the stranger sad. The Duke finds it insolent that the man dared to approach his love, even if it was a misunderstanding. It's something he can't forgive. But tonight, the silver-haired man is generous and allows him to go free, at least for this night. With that, Ulikian leads his fiancée away. Maddie accepts but is still curious about Lambda. He stands there with a strange smile, telling her to come back. The two are in the carriage. Maddie asks who that man is, but this is exactly what Ulikian wants to know. After all, who is that guy? The bodyguard looks at him, teasing him for having cursed, almost seeming proud of it. But the Duke is not in the mood for jokes and reminds her he gave guidance about being careful with things. Maddie wants to clear this up immediately, swearing she has absolutely no idea who that guy is and she was just walking back to the carriage when she ran into him. However, for some reason he confused her with someone else and suddenly grabbed her arm. She then questions, what was I supposed to do? Throw him on the floor? I just played along. She says, judging by the fact that the man opened the carriage door and came in on his own, she doubts he's a noble. Maddie observes Ulikian's reaction while telling him this. She asks if he doesn't believe what she's saying. Ulikian asking if she ever told the truth, throwing in her face that she only lies and there's no reason to trust her. Maddie just laughs, accepting it as fair. So the two ignore each other, causing an awkward silence during the ride. Ulikian thinks about how many men his fiancée might have. This is a situation he simply can't do nothing about. And with that, he decides to start investigating Maddie's past. Meanwhile, Maddie thinks about the hypocrisy. The Duke has a hidden sister and secretly challenges him to see who's better at keeping secrets, ready to find out what he's hiding. So 1 week passes. With a new disguise, Maddie is once again checking on the progress of the Montenegro case. Looking tired, Knox says he spent the whole day at the gambling house again. The red-haired boy says the man has no luck with cards, having lost his betting slip last time. He's not even joking. The man is that terrible. As for the knight who was the Countess's lover, since the rumors spread quickly, he now laments knowing he can't transfer to another order and will probably be fired soon. Excitedly, Maddie says it's the right moment to cast the bait, and thanks her brother for the good work, asking him to keep moving forward. Knox notices her disguising herself again, and asks why, and the only thing the bodyguard responds is that she's handling something important for her love. The red-haired boy teases the way his sister said it. But changing the subject, Maddie asks if he knows a guy called Lambda, who looks a little like a snake, and tells him she met him at the Imperial Ball, and the guy acted like he knew her. Knox says if he knows her but she doesn't know him, there's only one answer. He thinks the man is probably part of Rondaina's Imperial Security Force, or some foreign police force. Maddie can't stop thinking about that man. Now disguised, she heads into the streets. However, that memory comes back, making her think something is coming back to her this time. But no matter how hard she tries to think about it, she simply doesn't know the man at all. For now, she considers it unimportant and prefers to focus on the work she has to do. Maddie focuses on her mission. Last time she was there, she had no time, so she didn't get to investigate properly. But when she was leaving, a child gave her bread. Noticing that hair and those eyes, there's no doubt whatsoever that Rondaina's blood runs through those veins. She says her beloved must have thought he'd hidden things well, but she apologizes since she simply can't let this go. Maddie investigated everything so thoroughly that she even knows what food the child eats, so it's only a matter of time before the child becomes a fatal weakness. She hates having to deal with annoying things like this, so she hopes that by resolving this early she'll be forgiven. Maddie knows there's a snake hiding behind the mask of a friend. Crocton left the house of Astrid and found a man who was following him. He provided detailed information about the child's health condition and left with a hefty payment. Since the maid goes out every weekend, Maddie believes she's been selling information about Astrid's whereabouts every week. While sneaking around, Maddie thinks about how much of a long-term threat Crocton is to Ulikian, but she knows there'll be a perfect moment to deal with him, just not now. After looking around, she notices there are no hidden lookouts, which makes her question whether Vine is the only one responsible for Astrid's location, perhaps just to avoid information leaks. Maddie smiles, saying that after everything that happened, her dear fiancé is a fool. After all, he guards a secret he doesn't want anyone to know without caring about anything. But focusing on the work, Maddie easily violates the lock and opens the door without effort, only to walk in and find the unexpected. She's not the only guest there. Meanwhile, in the slums, someone hooded knocks on the door. Soon someone opens it, attending to the hooded figure. An old man who is actually Knox in disguise asks if they need his services. The hooded figure asks if he really has exceptional skills since he doesn't exactly look to be in great shape. The old man explains he's only responsible for taking the jobs. He says he needs someone investigated, their past tracked. Disguised Knox says that won't be a problem, guaranteeing they can find even people who have completely disappeared. The only thing that matters there is money. The hooded figure throws a bag with double the money if the job is done right. Knox says they just have to say the word and they'll unearth everything, what he knows and what he doesn't. That's when the game flips, and the person to be investigated is Maddie, to find out everything about her past. Despite being nervous, Knox manages to keep his disguise well. Curious, he asks what connection the stranger has to Maddie, and that's when another surprise of the night arrives. Ulikian reveals himself. He explains that even though they're in love, he can't know anything about his fiancée's past, so he has no other option but to resort to this, and asks the gentleman to understand the situation. Knox, in complete shock, drops the coins, which makes the Duke ask if he's okay. The red-haired man in disguise, despite being nervous, manages to reverse the situation, saying the young members of the organization will do their absolute best to find out. Knox explains that generous means she's resourceful, quick hands means she's agile, and drinks like a fish means she has a strong liver. What the red-haired man is trying to say is that Maddie might be a hidden gem, even if you have to dig very deep to reach it. He says he understands getting married isn't an easy decision, but it isn't. Kneeling, Knox asks if after knowing everything about her past he'd still get married. Ulikian, looking there, just thinks no idiot would miss this. He already figures out it's a man dressed as an old man and that it's someone who knows Maddie, so keeping up appearances, he says they love each other very much. The Duke moves him by saying, "It's simply because I want to know the truth that Maddie doesn't tell me. If she's in pain, I want to share it with her." Knox says he'll be blessed because there's no woman like her in this world. Even though he didn't say it in a good way, they should still get married. The red-haired boy also says, "Not that I personally would know if she's Maddie or some wild fish." Ulikian says that since the gentleman seems to know his fiancée, he asks him to keep this a secret, and if he needs more money, he'll pay more. Knox smiles at that, and promises to do so. The young old man explains he'll investigate everything he knows and doesn't know, and will return with a report. But the Duke warns there's no need since he'll be back in 10 days. Knox watches him leave, still a little emotional that this man is going to marry his sister. Before the Duke leaves, he says he knows Maddie better than anyone in this slum, and asks not to worry, guaranteeing he'll take care of everything. Away from him, Ulikian smiles, finding the man transparent and fun for someone who knows the bodyguard. While walking, he thinks about tonight Maddie also being out, so he wonders where she went and what she's doing this time. Well, she seems a little busy. Maddie fights the big guy and jokes about how strong he is. She's clinging to him like a snake, using her arms and legs to squeeze them, then throws him to the ground. Finally knocked out, she releases him. Maddie noticed that for a residential guard, the man is dressed suspiciously and moves with too much smoothness. She wipes her bruised face, grateful they heal quickly since she knows her fiancé would freak out if he saw her like this. Maddie wonders whether it was Crocton's doing or the one-eyed man's. After all, he took too long to talk even after being paid, which makes her think maybe they were planning something bigger. Maddie picks up the dagger, then asks the new guest how they dared to make a move before her, and says she's bothered by the internal conflict. With all her fury, Maddie throws the dagger, and gets disappointed that the second follower is even weaker than the first, when it should be the other way around, and that's truly frustrating. Unfortunately, she can no longer use the dagger. While cleaning the mirror, she wonders if she should listen first before leaving. Moving forward with her mission, she opens the door, revealing 2 more men in disguise. They have absolutely no idea who she is. However, Maddie is focused on only one thing in that room. She's finally meeting Astrid. The bodyguard pretends to be surprised to see those men there who ask who she is. Maddie says she stole their line since she was about to ask the same thing, which makes them think she's crazy. The bandits whisper among themselves, asking whether this situation is a betrayal. Ignoring her presence, they're deciding what to do, thinking it's a good option to eliminate the woman, destroy the place, and then leave. They believe it's all an ambush by the one-eyed man. Meanwhile, the victims are there trembling for their lives. Maddie, who's watching, finds something strange in the woman's hands, but ends up thinking it's just her imagination. She was thinking about whether she should send Ulikian's sister and niece away, or help them assume new identities. But not seeing the woman there, she believes she must have died. And now she's in a dilemma. She can't send a child away alone without their parents. Not to mention that if she's not careful, whoever is behind this could come back. She also fears this would break Ulikian's heart, who, even though he seems tough, is deeply lonely and fragile. Maddie becomes thoughtful, knowing that if the fiancé happens to give up on life and cancel the contract, that would be very bad. She carefully calls Astrid, saying she looks very much like someone she knows. Maddie maintains a gentle smile, saying not to be scared and asking her to come with her. The bodyguard surprises everyone in that room by saying she's going to be her new stepmother, not out of charity but because she knows that helping each other is the essence of marriage. But then the woman there shouts that she's Astrid's mother, which confuses the other one. Wasn't she supposed to be the babysitter? The bandit cuts in saying she's just the babysitter and asks her not to interfere, but Maddie isn't really in the mood for that. She laughs, saying, "How thoughtful of you. I was going to ask about your plan, but you just told me everything." Maddie says there's a problem here, that they won't be leaving alive, and that's exactly her job. Everyone's eyes stare at her wide open. One of them says he doesn't know who sent her, but he won't just let her walk away. Maddie takes that as a challenge. She notices marks on the guy's hand, a gang brand from Harvin. Maddie says she's not surprised that Harvin's been in a bad mood lately. His little minions keep ignoring orders and carrying out random kidnappings, which leaves the man impressed she knows that. She seems bored, having to confirm she just said she knows him, and after sighing repeats that her job is to make sure they don't leave there alive. She has no other reason to be there since they escaped and did extra work without even telling the boss. Without patience for that conversation, Maddie immediately goes at the man. She takes the opportunity to whisper to the babysitter to cover the child's eyes and run. Seconds later, the bodyguard lands the first blow and then delivers a sweep kick. One of the bandits recovers quickly and with a dagger is about to land a fatal blow, but Maddie is faster, grabbing his hand. While the fight happens, the babysitter makes sure Astrid doesn't see the violence. With everything finished, Maddie asks her to keep her eyes closed and stay still for a moment, then drags one of the bodies. A few minutes later, she says it's all over. Maddie is wearing the uniform. The girls are startled, but she explains that since her clothes got dirty, she had to change. She also says she was sent by the master, which is a lie. Maddie says he ordered them to be protected in case something unexpected happened. Then the woman surprises her by questioning why Lord Crocton didn't come, which leaves Maddie alert since she expected her to mention the Duke. The bodyguard finds it strange that Vine simply abandoned the child in a situation like this, especially since the babysitter was hired by him. At least that explains why the room felt strange, and also the lamentable condition the child is in. The babysitter asks if Lord Crocton anticipated problems as before, and prepared in advance, giving the impression this is something that happens regularly. All Maddie did was agree without giving herself away, but thinking about how the man predicted the assassination attempt, which wouldn't be something unexpected, the woman is confused about the direction things took since she was told under no circumstances to leave this property. Maddie tries to navigate the situation by saying it's strange, since a babysitter's top priority is always the child. She says they're not just some random thieves but assassins who broke in, and still the woman refuses to leave. So she questions, was your master planning to come to the rescue? Maddie steps closer while saying she wasn't only abusive with the child, but also begged for her own life in front of intruders, and still her master intended to save her. She delivers a slap to the woman and says the master must be very patient. Watching the woman being groggy after what she did, Maddie even provokes her, saying she's so exhausted she's almost falling asleep. The whole plan was to rescue Astrid afterward and stage an attack so she could send the girl somewhere else safer and make Ulikian feel a sense of crisis. So they could hide the child somewhere even Ulikian himself couldn't find, and then use his life as leverage. They also planned to eliminate the babysitter. Maddie at first found it strange to do that in front of the child who had been cared for all those years. That's when she understood they intended to traumatize the girl and use fear as a way to control her. Maddie steps closer to Astrid, and in that instant she's hit by memories that make her understand that fear is the simplest way to make someone obey. She clenches her teeth from the pain she feels, confused as to why those memories appeared at exactly that moment. Astrid is there standing, looking at her quite scared. Maddie smiles even though inside she's furious at those bastards who laid hands on such a small child. But unlike them, the woman extends her hand while saying she's there to save her, asking if she's ready to leave this place. However, Astrid is quite scared. Even though Maddie shows her a confident smile, she tries to be more friendly, asking if the girl is 5 years old. With her little fingers, Astrid counts out that she's 7 years old. In that moment of trust, Maddie says not to be scared. She's a friend of her uncle and is there to protect her. She guarantees she won't touch her until she gets permission. The bodyguard says she seems like a quiet child, so advises that if she doesn't want to talk, she can just nod, which Astrid understands perfectly. Maddie notices the many scars on the palms of her hands and even on her calves, and how she's freezing in those thin clothes. With that, she asks if the babysitter did that. Since Astrid made no sign, she asks whether someone gave instructions not to answer about that. That's all Maddie needs, understanding the child's reaction perfectly. The woman tries something else. She asks if she wants to stay there until the babysitter wakes up or come with her and finish reading a fun storybook. Astrid looks like she's about to burst, and Maddie laughs because the girl is surprised she knows exactly what she was thinking. Maddie says she has superpowers, explaining that even without saying a word she can hear her heart, and her inner voice is incredibly loud. She tells the girl, that's why when I heard you shout help me, I appeared at your heart in a flash. Maddie invites the girl to go outside together for the first time in a long time. However, Astrid can only hear the voice of that man telling her to never go out, because the world must never know of her existence, and that's the only way to survive. That babysitter also once yelled at her not to look out the window, but now Maddie is saying not to be scared. Astrid thinks for a while, until confidently she extends her arms. Maddie hugs her emotionally, saying countless compliments to this beautiful creature. The bodyguard gives her confidence, saying she's very strong so she doesn't need to worry, then asks her to just hold on tight and trust. So Maddie promises she'll protect her from everything, while Astrid, frightened, discovers the new world. The woman looks at the niece, seeing her little eyes fill with emotion. She suggests the two of them play pretend. So we go to a luxury hotel in a very lively neighborhood. General Svitian is warmly welcomed to the place and is told the requested clothes have already been placed in the room. He thanks them while offering some bills and gives instructions that he won't need breakfast the next morning and would like to rest in peace alone. The receptionist understands the message well. Alone, the general lets out a sigh of relief, then pulls off the wig, revealing it's just Knox in disguise. At least Count Montenezondo finally took the bait. Knox pretended to accidentally drop his betting slip and handed it over. When the Count appeared at the racetrack for a whole week, he was uneasy. Then with his appearance on the track that day, he was so happy he almost hugged and spun him around in circles. That's when Knox stepped up, giving tips on betting and winning at least 1,000 dillons. And judging by the Count's reaction, he realized the Duke must have lost at least that amount from his betting slip, which is probably why he was trying to avoid him. But in the end, Montenezando followed his advice and made an enormous profit. The emotion the man felt was something hard to forget. Pretending to leave the scene, the fake general was noticed. Montenezando then went up to him, introducing himself. Nox does the same, introducing himself as Marcy Svitian, leaving the Count a bit uneasy for never having heard that name before. The general says he came from Perzina, which is across the sea, explaining that's the reason he doesn't know him. To Montenezando, that makes sense. The Count notices the general's clothing, a tailored suit made of high-quality fabric, judging him to be a rich man who knows how to have fun. Nox says he's been there for about 2 months at the recommendation of a friend. Montenezando comments it's interesting, a young man who understands the excitement of horse races. But Nox says instead of understanding it, he just likes to bet. Then says, last time I saw you, I left my betting slip behind. Didn't you notice? Montenezando gets very nervous, saying he left right after all he needs to deny it, since his wife pressured him to use it for his daughter's birthday party, and there's no way to return it. Nox plays understanding, saying there's nothing to be done, and that it wasn't that much money anyway. The Count, impressed, says with 1,000 dillons you can buy a decent vacation home. The general just responds, whoever took it must have put it to good use. That's not something that concerns someone like me. That catches Montenezando's attention. Nox gives a confident smile and says, someone who always wins. He believes that at that moment the Count ran to his mistress, desperate to find information about him, without any idea that he knows about the two of them. The red-haired boy is confident the man will trust him blindly, without realizing he only showed up on days when his mistress was working in order to make money, or that he manipulated the jockeys and horses. And judging by his expression, he can tell the man is already somewhat convinced, and once he gathers enough rumors he spread about Svitian, he'll trust him even more. Nox smiles because it's time to prepare for the bigger game Maddie mentioned. Suddenly, his confident smile turns into a frown. The woman is there carrying a child who looks exactly like the Grand Duke. Maddie smiles and asks the girl to say hello to Uncle Nox. Stunned, Nox asks if she already had a child with the Duke. His sister asks him to stop being ridiculous and to come inside before the whole neighborhood ends up gathering. The red-haired boy still keeps asking about their child and wanting to know when they started dating. Maddie ignores him and tells Astrid to play a little with Uncle, advising that if he does anything strange she should bite him, which the boy protests. He wasn't doing anything. She touches the girl's shoulder and now Astrid allows that to happen and warns that she'll be back to pick her up before dawn. The woman extends a finger to seal the promise that she'll return, along with Ulikian. Astrid already trusts her and smiles, accepting the promise. Maddie has to control herself so she doesn't freak out from all the cuteness. Back in serious mode, she tells her brother she's counting on him for this, and also explains that the girl doesn't talk much so he shouldn't bother her. But all Nox paid attention to was that the Duke is actually the uncle. Quite confused, he finds it outrageous that his sister just walks off without explaining anything. But to his despair, she really does just leave without telling him anything more. Left behind with a great responsibility, Nox introduces himself to the girl, and of course asks Astrid what's going on. Back at the Grand Duke's study, even late he keeps working, especially because in recent weeks he's been a bit sloppy from spending all his time chasing after Maddie. He thinks about what the woman said, that if he wants to look like someone with no life expectancy, first he needs to stop working. And if he wants to be a true scoundrel, letting the city residents go hungry is the way. That makes him remember the conversation with his father, who told him they weren't born into royalty just because they did something good, but to do good, and having to take responsibility for many lives, which the little worried Ulikian thought was too much since carrying a dog is already a heavy task. That's when the prince says life is heavy. He asks the boy to tell him what his job is, to which Ulikian just answers that he's the crown prince, even though he's unsure whether that's really it. His father then carries him, confirming it because he was named as such, and together with the emperor they carry the weight of the country, having the duty to protect others and share happiness. Ulikian is impressed by that duty. Smiling, the crown prince confirms that's what they must do. After all, it's the right thing. The memory ends and tired Ulikian thinks how it seems like another sleepless night, and to let himself get carried away by thoughts even if they're not that important, imagining the many times Maddie was there. But right now, besides himself, the room is empty, so there's no way to sleep like this. Once again, his fiancée has been away from home for 3 days. At that moment, Philip comes into his room to inform him Maddie still hasn't returned. The butler even teases, keeping count of how many times the Duke has asked, and says if he asks one more time, he'll reach 50. With tea in hand, he suggests leaving it for the night, since there's nothing urgent right now. Ulikian reveals he doesn't understand why his fiancée keeps going out without telling him a single word, which isn't a difficult thing to do. Then he remembers the first time she did that, and when she came back she said those things. The Duke still has no idea what she meant by I'll never leave and I'll always stay, finding it a bit confusing coming from her. Philip asks if he didn't see her last night, suggesting Maddie would want him to rest well. Ulikian knows she's smart and observant and that she'll notice he hasn't slept, but he thinks Maddie will never find out why he stayed up. He just wished his fake fiancé would notice that someone really cares about her. While heading to bed, Ulikian thinks that lately the woman has been disappearing right after breakfast and their morning walk, and it's been a while since the two have had a decent moment alone. And of course he's quite curious about what keeps her so busy. With those thoughts, the Duke closes his eyes to sleep. Suddenly, he opens them again. Maddie is simply there by his side. Ulikian desperately grabs her hand, questioning whether she knows where she's putting her hands. Maddie looks at his exposed abdomen and asks if he really sleeps in pajamas like that, and even suggests putting it in the contract to do everything a married couple does. Immediately, the Duke covers himself up, telling her to stop saying nonsense and go to her room. He asks if she even knows what time it is, complaining that she just showed up late without a word and then sneaked into his bed. Maddie provokes him. "Wow, the way you said that it sounds like if I had arrived earlier you would have done something." Suddenly, the Duke starts sweating, leaving Maddie worried as she warns something bad is happening. He says he thinks he has arrhythmia, not understanding why his heart is beating so fast. Maddie looks more calm, asking how he can say that. After all, he's no Hercules or anything. She scolds him for diagnosing himself with a disease. Ulikian just corrects her that the pioneer of Western medicine is Hippocrates. Ulikian thinks he might just have post-traumatic stress symptoms from seeing Maddie eliminate someone, and that's why his heart races every time he sees her. The bodyguard snaps him out of his thoughts by saying it doesn't matter if it's impotence or whatever, she was talking about him, which sends the Duke into hysteria for bringing that word into the conversation. Maddie provokes him by asking why he's so upset, and even says, "Oh, is that why you shook the bed 4 times the other night? I think an empty cart makes more noise, right?" Ulikian can't even prove she's wrong, which frustrates him while Maddie keeps laughing at her own provocations. Still hysterical, the Duke asks her to stop, saying he's telling the truth and that if she really knew she'd be shocked and would even run away. But it's a fun night and the two are laughing about it. Ulikian thinks how ironic it is that after making him worry so much, all she does is joke around. Even so, he feels more at ease when with Maddie, having even ridiculous conversations. He thinks about how even when she acted like a thief, she never let herself be looked down on. Then that good moment simply ends when Maddie says she met his niece, making Ulikian immediately panic, his thoughts spinning around Astrid. Still shocked by that revelation, Ulikian asks her to repeat what she just said. Maddie never lost her confidence, so smiling she says she met Astrid, his weak point. She advises her client not to just leave weaknesses out in the open like that, or someone will notice and take advantage. Ulikian asks what she did, and the woman answers that she made sure nobody else could use it against him. In a panic without understanding her intentions, Ulikian asks if it's some kind of hobby digging up people's weaknesses just to use them later, something so low and dirty to do. Maddie isn't affected, still with the same confident smile, and says it would be so unfair since one knows dirty things about the other. After all, the Duke reported to the police about that dirty little job from the day they met. Agitated, Ulikian says that was only in case she was thinking of running, and that she's been his weakness since the moment he made the marriage proposal in public. Maddie holds his hand, stopping him, and denies it. She then reminds him they signed a life-or-death contract, which means there should be no secrets between them, and questions how he could hide the existence of his niece from his own fiancé. Ulikian gets so nervous, he stays quiet for a few seconds. He provokes her by saying, "Even if you were really my fiancé, do you think I'd tell you about Astrid?" The Duke pressures her, revealing he didn't want the girl to grow up like him, always running and being hunted. He also asks if she eliminated the child. Maddie relieves him by denying she did anything like that, and surprises him by saying she hid her. Smiling, the woman says she now understands it wasn't about revenge or survival, but that his real intention was always to protect his niece. Furious, Ulikian asks what she's saying and whether she investigated his past, just to find that out. She pushes back, asking what he's hiding so much. Ulikian doesn't calm his anger and asks if that's how she operates, with constant suspicion, investigating everyone's past, finding their weaknesses to test them like some kind of thing. Still calm, Maddie responds that her way is to not trust anyone because people can cry and beg right in front of her, but she has no idea what they're doing behind her back. She says she has to investigate everything personally to know for certain because that's how her business works. Looking a little offended, Ulikian somewhat understands that to her everything is just business. Quite calm, Maddie steps closer to him and says that if he wants to see Astrid, he better be prepared. But she whispers that the girl is a delicate little flower just like her uncle, so he'd better be prepared because she has some pretty shocking news for him. The two ride, and by this point Ulikian already knows what Astrid went through. Maddie confirms it, telling him she found her outside in the cold wearing nothing but a thin dress with her hands and calves covered in scars from whippings. Ulikian clenches his teeth in fury as the bodyguard explains that Astrid was probably threatened, which is why she acted as if everything was fine when he came to visit. The marks were made with thin cords, very hard to notice. He can't believe that he gave advance warnings for the girl's safety and they simply used that against her. Maddie says that wasn't even the worst part, telling him that when she arrived there was already another guest in the property, holding Astrid and the babysitter hostage. Laughing, the woman says not to worry about that since she handled everything before the girl even noticed. Looking a bit irritated, Ulikian asks if she enjoys talking about eliminating people. Maddie confirms it with great excitement, and this is certainly one of those moments where the heroine simply doesn't need to wait for her duke to save her. The bodyguard says she protected the weakness he worked so hard to keep hidden, and now she's safe and sound. A perfectly completed mission. She laughs, saying how incredible she is and that he should write about it. Ulikian is direct, saying he didn't ask for that and could have handled it without her interference. Maddie responds that a true professional resolves the root cause before the client even realizes it exists. Smiling, she questions why he thinks she's the best fixer in the underworld, and says she wasn't discarded. Ulikian is a little surprised by those words. He asks what she means by discarded, and Maddie doesn't seem to grasp the weight of that, so the Duke says that people normally don't use the word discarded to describe themselves. But Maddie genuinely has no idea what she's saying, as if in her world saying that was completely normal. Ulikian ends up dropping it, but still thinks about why she would say that. The Duke follows Maddie and asks about the babysitter and whether she's with Astrid. Then he's shocked to hear the woman is dead. Maddie is unfazed, saying Croton would have handled it anyway. Ulikian protests, saying the babysitter was someone his friend brought, and even if he found out what had been done to Astrid, he's not the type to eliminate someone in a fit of rage. Already wearing a disguise, Maddie says, "Babe, you're really oblivious. Do you still completely trust your dear friend?" Maddie questions whether the babysitter was really just that, telling him that when the house was invaded, the woman didn't flee with Astrid, just stayed there waiting for Crockton, which is strange since her duty is to prioritize the child's protection. Maddie is removing his clothing while getting ready for the true revelation. She says she interrogated one of the hitmen, discovering the meeting location for the person who ordered the kidnapping. With a smile, she asks, "Guess who I found when I showed up pretending to collect my payment?" From the Duke's look, he already gives away the person. Earlier that previous day, Maddie went to the meeting and so discovered that the dearest friend was the one who set it all up. When she rescued the girl earlier, the plan still hadn't been finished. For the first time in her life, someone asked Astrid if she was ready for what was about to happen. Maddie looked at that cute little face of Astrid's. The girl quickly learned how to do it, twisting her mouth and making a sad little face that left Maddie so proud she was ready to open a business together when she grew up. Maddie says they're going to play a game where she's a very scary person, and Astrid is a very good girl, instructing her to look scared because she was kidnapped by a very scary villain. She also covers the girl's eyes, promising it won't be for long and asking her to count to 100 once she's alone, and promises she'll come pick her up soon. Then Maddie went to one of the kidnappers, demanding to know where she'd find the person behind the kidnapping to collect the rest of her payment, and he says it's on Calderon Street, 3rd Avenue. Soon the bodyguard arrives at the arranged place, both of them ready for a little game. As soon as she stepped close, Maddie demanded the rest of the payment. Now she's face to face with the man the babysitter mentioned. He had found a note demanding triple the amount to return the child and to show up at the new location. Vine asks who the person is. With a disguised voice, Maddie says she heard their boss ordered the elimination of anyone who accepted jobs without permission, and was told Crockton sent them. Crockton put it all together, asking if some punk then faked the boss's order, eliminated the assassins, and kidnapped Astrid to keep all the money. Vine already thinks about what to do, even though he doesn't like getting his hands stained with red liquid. He'll have to say the babysitter was eliminated as planned, and that Ulikian won't notice anyway. He doesn't care what they do with the money, he just wants to know if they finished the job right. Smiling, Maddie says some things happened, but she managed to bring the girl safely as instructed. Astrid keeps making a scared face. Maddie was worried about things since the girl doesn't talk much, but at least she has no easily visible injuries, which is a relief. The bodyguard puts her on the ground and Astrid hears the voice of her uncle Crockton calling her. While the man throws the bag of coins, the child runs into his arms. Staring at her, Vine asks why she's not picking up what was just thrown, questioning whether she won't check if it really has triple the amount she demanded. Maddie says she plans to check once he leaves, but decides to take a quick look. That's when Crockton draws his sword, trying to take advantage of the moment. At the sound of Maddie's scream, Astrid quickly removes her blindfold, puzzled that the game still isn't over. Seeing the body on the ground, the girl panics, and without understanding anything, Crockton tries to calm her down, saying he took care of the bad man. He soothes her, saying he punished the bad man and that he'll protect her. Vine asks if she understands what he's saying, and Astrid is completely terrified. The girl can't control her sadness, seeing her fallen on the ground lifeless. Then Crockton steps closer, ending the mystery by revealing it's not Maddie there. He finds that strange. Things got a little more complicated for him, but either way in the end, Ulikian's niece is completely in his hands. No witnesses were left behind. The knight had already planned to eliminate all the hired assassins after the job was done, so one more body is nothing on his list. Now he just needs to hide Astrid somewhere far away, and make up an excuse about a traitor among Ulikian's men who refuses to give her location. Vine smiles, believing his friend is now a puppet in his hands. After walking for a while, he finds some also hooded men and tells Astrid they're going somewhere safe, so from now on she needs to behave and go with them. Crocton manipulates her, warning that if she removes the blindfold she won't be able to see her uncle. Then someone grabs Astrid's arm, dragging the small child. The men walk past Crocton while taking her away. Without understanding anything, Astrid is very scared. They soon arrive at the hiding place. The man simply tosses Astrid and tells her to stay there. Still unable to see, the girl follows the sound. The door is closed, and Astrid, trying to turn around, ends up falling to the ground in this abandoned place. The girl cries while trying to convince herself everything will be fine, just as Maddie promised. After all, that body on the floor wasn't even her. Remembering to count to 100, Astrid does that until she falls asleep. Suddenly, the girl wakes up in Nox's arms, startled, looking everywhere. The red-haired boy asks what's wrong and whether it's because of his sister. He asks her not to worry, that the woman always keeps her promises, but that's not what worries her. Suddenly, the door opens, drawing the attention of both of them. That gives Astrid a wonderful memory of when Maddie appeared out of nowhere and saved her again. Maddie walks in announcing she's back and brought her uncle with her. With great joy, Astrid runs into his arms, throwing herself happily at him for having sent her a hero. We're taken to a memory from 3 years ago. The carriage carrying the Duke is suddenly stopped by someone stepping in front of it. That already leaves Ulikian scared, wanting to understand why. The coachman just says a woman simply jumped in front of the carriage, which leaves the Duke genuinely worried. Suddenly, the woman steps closer and through the window hands him a note. He takes it in alarm, thinking she might be a messenger from the Empire. It's a request from his sister asking him to help Astrid and explaining that the girl hasn't said a word since she saw her father die. In panic, Ulikian looks at the woman. That is his sister Lavidia. On the day the prince's palace caught fire, his twin sister disappeared without a trace. Many times he had asked his mother but never got answers, so logically he assumed his sister couldn't still be alive. Ulikian asks the coachman Kale to give him a moment alone. Emotionally, the Duke steps out of the carriage, asking his sister how she is and saying he really thought she was dead. He also asks why she never made contact and when she got married. Lavidia says nothing, just throws a child into his arms. Even as Ulikian shouts for her, the sister walks away. Still, Ulikian wants to know at least where she's staying and to know more about her husband's death. But Lavidia simply leaves without telling him anything. Ulikian finally gathers the courage to look at the child in his arms. Astrid has a vacant look no child her age should have. A few days later, after asking non-stop, he finally went back to find Lavidia, but it was already too late. It seemed like a robbery, but he asked himself who would bother doing that in a miserable shack on the outskirts of the slums. The Duke held the lifeless body of his sister, still unable to understand. She had simply shown up after all those years and then just left like that. He quickly imagined that Lavidia had known this would happen. That's why she left Astrid behind and disappeared as if she were a fugitive. Ulikian sheds tears imagining she did that so she could die alone, wanting to save her daughter. They held a small intimate funeral, and since she had already been declared dead, she couldn't simply be buried beside her parents. Astrid didn't cry once, didn't even smile, just ate enough to survive. And no matter which doctor was brought in, none of them could cure the inability to speak caused by witnessing her father's death. Ulikian couldn't look at Astrid since she looks exactly like her mother, and all he could think was that Lavidia died in his place, and the little one had her parents taken away because of him. At least that's how he feels. Ulikian tells his friend that his sister left in his place, and that if he had suddenly died, the nobles who supported him would have revolted. Crying, he says it was a warning to back away and give up on everything. Vine sees the pain in his friend's eyes and words. So Ulikian asked him to take care of Astrid, hiding her somewhere nobody could find her, giving her a good chance of survival. After that, he visited her several times. Astrid would just stare at him in silence without even showing a sign she was happy to see him. At first, he thought it was natural after everything the child had been through at such a young age. Looking at Maddie, Ulikian didn't know she could smile so beautifully. Astrid grew up while he stayed the same. Maddie notices how dirty the girl got from playing so much and is ready to give her a bath. But finally, Ulikian moves, saying he'll do it. But Maddie immediately says no, explaining that even though Astrid looks younger than her age, she's already 7, leaving the Duke confused by the refusal. The woman sighs, saying nobles are a pain with no sense at all. She says Astrid is big and questions what kind of uncle insists on bathing a big child. Maddie asks the girl if she doesn't want to be bathed by her uncle because it's weird, also asking who she wants to bathe with. She still plays with the girl, asking if the old uncle is boring or if he's a super powerful wizard. The girl happily throws herself into her arms, so Maddie ends the argument by saying he can't bathe the girl. Ulikian is confused because Maddie just dove into the wardrobe. Looking at him perplexed, Nox guarantees his sister is good with baths. The Duke looks at the red-haired boy, questioning his manners for calling him man, but suddenly he notices something. Nox was that little old man in disguise who attended him. But another revelation for Ulikian is that the man they said was Maddie's boyfriend was a lie. Nox panics again at that story, saying he feels like throwing up being mistaken for his sister's boyfriend. A thoughtful Ulikian realizes from Nox's reaction that the red-haired boy doesn't know about the contract, so at least he won't need to worry too much about what the red-haired boy thinks of their relationship. Knox says the man gets very dreamy thinking about his sister and wishes they'd be locked inside the Duke's property forever, but he also can't be completely at ease since it affects Maddie's future. Ulikian gives a reassuring smile, saying no matter Maddie's past, his feelings won't change. Even in a moment of panic, Knox is a little confused, trying to understand what the real problem is. The door opens, finally revealing Maddie has finished the bath. She draws the attention of the two boys. There's a problem here. The child in her hands is actually a boy. And yeah, honestly, I didn't expect to enjoy this story this much, but the dynamic between Maddie and Ulikian is just too good. Like, it starts off as this fake marriage, both of them clearly using each other, but you can already see those little moments slipping through. The way he gets flustered, the way she teases him but still protects him no matter what. It just feels natural, you know? And Maddie especially, she's not your typical female lead. She's chaotic, unpredictable, but at the same time super loyal in her own way. And somehow that makes the romance even better because you never really know when it's acting or when it's real. Personally, I loved how their relationship slowly builds on trust, even if both of them keep pretending it's all just part of the deal. Anyway, that's it for now. This recap covered up to chapter 29 of Don't Worry, We Both Agreed to This Fraudulent Marriage. If you guys want me to continue and make a part 2, let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. Kisses and see you next time.